Post-Apocalyptic Black Technology Battleship System. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226 Internal and External Issues. Chapter 228 Internal and External Issues. Xia Bai glanced at Xia Bai in front of him, exhaled slightly, thought for a while, and then said, "Actually, I don't know the specific situation. Yi Hanyu seemed to have seen someone at that time, and she always seemed very emotional. Later, Mr. Chen, the person in charge of Fuxin, well, his words are indeed a bit unpleasant, so I don't think we need to fight there. Moreover, the location of the survivor base there is in an open area on the edge of the city, where defense facilities are built. It's very bad. There are more than 10,000 survivors inside, and this area right now." After Xia Bai spoke, she began to justify the Fuxin survivor base. Xia Bai didn't say anything else, but nodded thoughtfully. Yi Hanyu, did you see someone? Is he an acquaintance? Unlikely. According to Yi Hanyu, she lost control of her emotions after seeing that someone. So, are they enemies? As far as Xia Bai knew, Yi Hanyu had always stayed in Zhu City before meeting him. Where did he come from as an acquaintance or enemy? Xia Bai was really a little confused. He felt that Xia Bai didn't tell the truth very much. But he had already made up his mind. When the battleship reached level 5, he would kill it first and take a look. Although Xia Bai is now the founder of the survivor base, Xia Bai is still the guy who protects his shortcomings. In his heart, Bailan, Yi Hanyu, and Hao Zuang, who were the first to follow him all the way to where he is today, those are his people through and through, his people in the true sense. Therefore, whoever dares to touch his people will not have an easy time. At that moment, he and Xia Bai had a brief exchange of words. Xia Bai also knew that his policy of protecting shortcomings was to avoid speaking out as soon as possible, and he never mentioned to Xia Bai that he would retaliate for his anger as time goes by. The time for this scheduled conference has also arrived. This is the first Anyang Mountain Full Leadership Conference since the establishment of Anyang Mountain. Of course, although they are said to be the leadership of Anyang Mountain. In fact, these people who come are at best just responsible persons in various directions and fields. With the current scale of Anyang Mountain, these people are not actually leaders. Huang Qiulan must be there, and it is impossible for Hao Zuang, Kyo Deming, and Ziyachen from the Anyang Mountain Guard not to come. In addition, Lin Huacheng, who is responsible for growing food, also appears here. This is now the big red star in the survivor base. People are following him wherever he goes when he grows sweet potatoes. There are also many survivors from other positions who want to follow him in farming. In addition to these familiar faces to Xia Bai, there were also many rare faces. For example, He Zudang, the chief engineer of the entire Anyang Mountain construction plan, and Ang Zuming, Zhao Xianyu, and Chen Guangyao, the three leaders who emerged from the new batch of large-scale survivors, are all influential figures in Anyang Mountain at the moment. As time goes by, Xia Bai rarely appears in large public places, but the military equipment and government affairs of Anyang Mountain are still in the hands of Hao Zuang and Huang Qiulan, who are under Xia Bai. He himself is now more like a sort of Zuanshan, and warships rumbling past in the sky every day are enough to calm the people on Anyang Mountain, and they cannot think of anything else. Xia Bai's battleship is too powerful. Even if these people have some ideas, even if they are born, it will be difficult to put them into practice. This meeting actually had little content. According to the current situation, the internal situation was first analyzed. According to what Huang Qiulan and Xia Bai said before, she wanted to reorganize the three survivors, Deng Zuming, Zhao Xianyu, and Chen Guangyao. The power structure of the most influential people in the country is weakened and redistributed. This idea came up at this time, but it was Xia Bai who took the lead. The reason for doing this was mainly because of the previous missile attack in Bincheng. The ghost in Anyang Mountain has not yet been found. Xia Bai did this. If we want to break up the existing survivor power situation in Anyang Mountain first, not only the ordinary survivors must be broken up, but also Ziyachen, Huang Qiulan, and even Kyo Deming, and how Zhuang must be broken up. But this is something that cannot be rushed. If it is not handled well, it may cause a backlash from many people. Therefore, today I only revealed a little bit of clues to prepare everyone. Moreover, Xia Bai also prepared sufficient excuses for this split. When the survivors of Anyang Mountain were first established, their slogan was to build a pre-apocalyptic city and rebuild a pre-apocalyptic order. Therefore, now that he wants to split up the factions that are more like warlords, others have nothing to say. Of course, in pre-apocalyptic society, at least in Chinese society, factions existed everywhere. Even primary school students knew how to form gangs, but the reality was reality. When Xia Bai used this statement, it was difficult for others to refute it. Beyond this, there are some internal issues, such as food, medicine, accommodation, etc. After internal problems, comes the external situation. Being sieged by zombies is not a problem. Today, Anyang has high mountain walls and deep walls, and can achieve self-sufficiency in food. So what if it is surrounded by zombies? It's been so long since the end of the world, who hasn't been surrounded by zombies? The main question is whether to lend a helping hand to other survivor bases. Intelligent zombies have not appeared near Anyang Mountain, but other survivor bases throughout Liao province are being harassed by intelligent zombies. In 2 months, several survivor bases have been invaded by intelligent zombies. The zombies were defeated at a speed that no one else could react, turning a large survivor base into a corpse cave overnight. No one could escape from the zombie tide. At this time, the benefits of Anyang Mountain's previous strict inspection are revealed. There are no intelligent zombies inside Anyang Mountain, but outside, there is Xia Bai's battleship. The intelligent zombies are not sure to take down his battleship, so they don't want to come first. Without Xia Bai's hard nails, Anyang Mountain, the well-known survivor base, is relatively safe. Chen Guangao said, "We have no obligation to save anyone. We are also in a state of zombie siege now. Let's not talk about small survivor bases, let's talk about large-scale ones. There are thousands of people at least, which is quite far away from our Anyang Mountain. Far. We want to rescue them. Mr. Xia, your battleship and our helicopter formation may be able to do it, but for such a long distance, we all rely on air transportation to support one survivor or not. But I see what Mr. Xia means. The first one to be rescued is the survivor base in Fuxin with a population of tens of thousands, right? With all due respect, if you want to rescue the people in the Fuxin survivor base, you cannot rely on Mr. Xia's aircraft and helicopter formations alone. You must use the Anyang Mountain Guard, and the Anyang Mountain Guard will start from Anyang Mountain. I don't need to explain the risks and costs. Everyone must be aware of them. Chapter 227 Undercurrent. Chapter 229 Undercurrent. Chen Guangao was right. Xia Bai really wanted to save people, and he didn't just want to merge a Fuxin survivor base. He wanted to gather all the survivors from the entire Liao province and build a base here with Anyang Mountain as a center. A truly apocalyptic city. When the zombies are exterminated, this will be the new city of the 3 eastern provinces, the real tactical base for the arrival of alien creatures, and the city of the future. To achieve this, it is impossible without population. Of course, this is Xia Bai's longest term plan. However, what Chen Guangao said makes sense. According to the current situation, if the Anyang Mountain Guards are dispatched, they will not only go to rescue wherever they go, but they must first break through the corpse tide outside Anyang Mountain. Such an action will inevitably lead to the interior of Anyang Mountain has become empty, even putting themselves at great risk. The most important thing is that the Anyang Mountain Guards currently only have more than 1,000 people. For ordinary survivors, this number can be regarded as a luxurious army. But in the current situation, it is a problem to defend the entire Anyang defense line, let alone go out to provide assistance. Therefore, when Chen Guangao said these words, everyone nodded in agreement. Kyo Deming agreed. Although this guy has a peaceful temperament, he is also content with the status quo. Now there is a war breaking out in the 3 eastern provinces. He doesn't want to be there at this time, taking risks. He had a good time staying in Anyang Mountain. He didn't want to take risks, and he didn't want Anyang Mountain to take any risks in response. Xia Bai just smiled and said, everyone can rest assured about this matter. The Anyang mountain guards will not be dispatched, and the situation will not be what everyone imagined. Of course, Xia Bai can also worry about what these people are worried about. The team in Anyang mountain cannot move. Although the situation has changed a lot, Xia Bai's thoughts remain the same point: you can save people, but if you can't get into trouble yourself, then you're not saving people, you're just looking for trouble. Xia Bai is also waiting. When the battleship reaches level 5, he can easily take away the people in the Fuchs in survivor base without the Anyang mountain guards. Of course, the premise is that he must vent his anger on Yihan first. When the battleship reaches level 5, Anyang mountain will completely become a rear base for Xia Bai, and the entire operation will serve the battleship. By then, Xia Bai believes that zombies will no longer be a threat to him. Now the battleship has accumulated more than 70,000 energy points. Moreover, with the complete stabilization of the situation in Anyang mountain, the consumption of energy points has gradually decreased, and the number of pure energy points recorded is increasing every day. According to this efficiency, the battleship will reach level 5 by September at the latest point. But other people's thoughts were not as optimistic as Xia Bai's, but they all looked at each other and said nothing more. Xia Bai's reputation in Anyang mountain can be described as extremely brutal. Not to mention the fact that he cut off the military's belongings. The daughter of the zoo group and the commissioner of the scientific research center are still being detained in Anyang mountain. Last time, the things delivered by the zoo group were intercepted, and Xia Bai came to kill people overnight. It was already known to everyone earlier, not to mention that Xia Bai went out to hunt zombies every day. Everyone didn't know why. They just thought that Xia Bai was crazy and liked to kill zombies. Therefore, although Xia Bai seems to be a very gentle person, many people who don't know Xia Bai think that he is the legendary gentle beast. At this moment, Xia Bai expressed his position, and everyone couldn't say anything else. They could only show some concern. The conference was completely over here. Everyone dispersed, and Xia Bai and Huang Qiulan had a brief conversation. On the other side, Chen Guangao walked out of the current Anyang command center, but he did not rush to leave immediately. Instead, he silently lit a cigarette. It was not until Xia Chen walked out from behind that he came up and smiled, said, "Thank you, brother. Go back together. Take 2 steps. The distance from here to the residential area is not that far." Xia Chen glanced at him, frowned slightly, then turned to look at the building behind him, remained silent for a moment, and nodded. The 2 people walked forward side by side, while the person they brought was 5 or 6 meters behind, following from a distance. Chen Guangao is a middle-aged man with a square face and a tall figure. Compared to Xia Chen, he looks more like a big shot. However, Xia Chen heard that Chen Guangao was actually an old man before the end of the world. He stays at home all day eating and waiting to die, relying on his parents' pension. Although Xia Chen is not a good person, he used to be a working class person and can be regarded as a decent person. He is also a member of the Anyang mountain guards. He is better than Chen Guangao, who is in charge of survivors, so he is somewhat superior. Sensational. But he seemed to know why Chen Guangao wanted to go with him, and he remained silent. Halfway through the journey, Chen Guangao said leisurely, "Mr. Z is still as cautious as ever." Xia Chen glanced at him and said, I don't mean as much as you do. I have said before about your matter that I will not participate. Of course, I will not tell anyone that you succeeded. His ability has nothing to do with me." Chen Guangao blew out the cigarette, smiled, and said, "Mr. to save people, not to mention how he can draw people from Fuchs into Anyang mountain. Even if he does it, Anyang mountain is such a big place and there is only so much food. This is not to lead Anyang mountain to a pit of fire. Should we push it inside? If we don't do something at this time, the situation will change suddenly in the future. Zombies will come in, and big trouble will occur. By then, even if we want to do something, we won't be able to do it." Xia Chen still didn't speak. He just lowered his head and walked forward silently. Chen Guangao took another breath and said, "Lao Zi, I'm sorry to say that you are too timid and afraid of getting into trouble. Isn't Anyang mountain originally yours? That Xia Bai can't even use a cannon. It hit your face. Now you, Z. Yacheng didn't let Chen Guangaiyao finish what he said. He immediately interrupted. This trick of provoking generals is of no use to me. How about hitting me in the face with a cannon? If it hits your face, you will cry and scream too. Mom, this is nothing. You have said so much. Let me remind you that this is Anyang Mountain. You should have heard about the 5 missiles in Bincheng last time. Now Anyang Mountain is not Bincheng. Don't get ahead of yourself and let others beat you. After saying such words coldly, Yacheng took a breath, quickened his pace, and walked away from Chen Guangaiyao. Chapter 228 Why don't you take Captain Lu back? Chapter 230 How about you take Captain Lu back? Chen Guangaiyao watched Yacheng's back walking away, took a puff of cigarette, and the smoke spurted out from his nose, with a somewhat uncertain look on his face. At this time, a deputy behind him came up and whispered, "This grandson, should we use it, Chen?" Guangaiyao turned his head and saw the fierce look in his deputy's eyes and said, "This is just a mouse. It doesn't matter if he knows about it. He doesn't dare to say a word. If we touch him, we will be in trouble ourselves." What's going on Kisheng's side? Xia Bai's intention today is to split up the survivors. By then, if he doesn't take action, I won't be able to do anything. His deputy shook his head and said, "He said people have arrived, but we still have to wait for news, Chen." Guangaiao's face became a little gloomy, and he said, "The next time you send a message to Changbei Mountain, you can tell them that my place may be exposed at any time. If they don't take action, there will be Xia Bai's battleship in Anyang Mountain, and Nki's don't even want it." The deputy nodded slightly. Chen Guangaiao thought for a while and then said, "We must be careful not to let our people contact us directly. It is still the old method, pass it down layer by layer, and use the lowest level to contact the people of the lower level." The deputy responded slightly. Chen Guangaiao just exhaled, holding a cigarette in his mouth, and his eyes wandered back and forth on Anyang Mountain in the night. And Kisheng came to him about 3 or 4 months ago. At that time, he was integrated into the Anyang Mountain survivor base. Although he could be regarded as a small leader with hundreds of survivors, when he was incorporated, he was actually nothing at first, but later, he was Kisheng's people, the Zhu group, found him and secretly helped him, which allowed his power to expand in such a short period of time, and now he has even become the leader among the survivors of Anyang Mountain. And Kisheng has promised him that once Xia Bai of Anyang Mountain falls, he will take Xia Bai's place and become the new person in charge of Anyang Mountain. He will still receive the support of the military. However, when the time comes, support for Anyang Shan's military faction will no longer be the Yang Wenshan faction, the nominal leader of the Changbei Mountain survivor base, but will become the Anki Zengai faction. What Kisheng wants is not actually Anyang Mountain. Now is not the time to occupy territory. Anyang Mountain is just a dispensable one. It doesn't matter to Kisheng. What he wants is Xia Bai's battleship. Therefore, Chen Guangaiao also promised Kisheng that he would hand over Xia Bai's battleship to the military. But Chen Guangaiao had another thought in his heart. When the time comes, the devil will hand over the battleship. Why is Xia Bai so arrogant? Isn't it because of the battleship? If only I had a battleship. When Chen Guangaiao thought about this time, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly, and the corners of his mouth slowly raised with a hint of contentment. It seemed that at this moment, he had already taken the position of leader of Anyang Mountain. At the same moment, in the conference center of Anyang Mountain, there were only Xia Bai, Huang Qiulan and Hao Zuan. They only briefly talked about deployment and internal issues at this moment. Huang Qiulan suddenly said, "Xia Bai, we may have some clues about what happened in Bincheng before." Oh. Xia Bai's eyebrows raised slightly, but she didn't look too surprised. Because the first clue to this matter was actually discovered by him himself. That was an abnormal external communication signal discovered during the battleship's scanning of Anyang Mountain. Although a communication network is being established inside Anyang Mountain, it is actually difficult to detect this signal among the mix, but the technology of Xia Bai's battleship is the best in the world. It may not be good in scientific research and reconnaissance, but as long as it is related to combat, yes, that is all correct. No matter how encrypted and stable this signal is, it cannot escape the retrieval of the battleship point. He immediately delegated the matter to Huang Qiulan and asked her to investigate the situation point, and now there seems to be feedback. Huang Qiulan said, I checked and it seems that it is Chen Guangaiao's person who is in contact with someone outside and is sneaky, but I haven't confirmed what he is doing specifically. Xia Bai nodded and said, keep an eye on him for me. If anything happens, if I'm not here, you can contact Hao Zhuang first. It doesn't matter anything else. You can handle it yourself. However, if it is confirmed that this guy is from before the guy who sent out a message that I was hit by 5 missiles in Bincheng, don't alert him. Wait for me to come back and kill him with one shot. Huang Qiulan couldn't help but twitch the corners of her mouth, but she nodded, briefly talked about other things, stood up, and left point. When Huang Qiulan went out, Hao Zhuang said, hey, boss, Sister Huang has changed a lot these days. Xia Bai frowned and said, what's wrong, Hao? Zhuang smiled and said, the one she was wearing just now is from a top brand in Europe. I knew it when I was watching rubbish TV series. That brand is hard to find in China. Now in this apocalypse, she has to wear plastic surgery. It's definitely not easy to dress up like that. Xia Bai really didn't pay attention, and he didn't expect that Huang Qiulan would do such a trick to him. However, everyone has their own preferences, and Xia Bai wouldn't just say anything, but he did write it down. In fact, Xia Bai didn't care much about these trivial matters, but the origin of the 5 missiles before. When Xia Bai established Anyang Mountain at the beginning, he wanted to delegate power and enjoy the benefits himself, because his foundation was still warships. Everything else is imaginary, and there is no need for him to invest too much energy in building a survivor base. Xia Bai glanced at Hao Zhuang and said, you bastard, stop caring about other people's affairs and quickly build a team for me. From now on, I will have to fill in the fleet combat personnel on the battleship. When Hao Zhuang heard this, he couldn't help but twitching the corner of his mouth and said, big brother, there is no need to rush this. It is reliable and capable of fighting. How can such a team be so easy to pull up? Comfort makes people lazy. Why don't you, big brother, take over Captain Lu Yabeilu and become ours completely? Let her train our team. Hao Zhuang is still the same as before, losing his true form after 2 sentences. Now he is a heavyweight in Anyang Mountain, and he is still the same college student who used to talk nonsense. Xia Bai kicked him up and said, why don't you go and collect it from Captain Lu? Go. Hao Zhuang looked aggrieved and said, what I said is all from my conscience. Captain Lu is a nice person, has a good looking face, and has a great figure. Xia Bai said, do you believe that I told Lu Yabei what you said directly? Hao Zhuang's expression suddenly changed. Don't. It's okay if Captain Lu knows about it. If her brothers know about it, they will have to unload it on me. Far away from here, Lu Yabei, who was taking a hot bath, sneezed inexplicably. Chapter 229 Turmoil. Chapter 231 Turmoil. Changbai Mountain Survivor Base, June 17th. 2019, 11:39 p.m. Yang Chengxi heard a loud noise. The loud noise came from the survivor's residential area on the mountainside of Changbai Mountain. He had not fallen asleep at this time, because a few hours ago, something went wrong on the battlefield in Daxinganling. A group of zombies came down from the sky, making the whole situation chaotic, and the entire Changbai Mountain became busy. Yang Chengxi can only be regarded as a half-military person. Although his father is Yang Wenshan, the former military commander of the entire northeast region, and is currently the nominal commander-in-chief, Yang Chengxi is strangely not here within the system. Therefore, while the military and related agencies across the Changbai Mountains were busy with the current situation of the Greater Khingan Mountains, Yang Chengxi was selling things. Yes, he is selling something. He set up a tent in the survivor's residential area below Changbai Mountain and started selling all kinds of random things. When he was at the Ice City survivor base, he was a goods dealer, and now he is even more so. But although he is selling things, he himself does not show up. After these few months of operation, he no longer needs to appear in front of the stage, but exists as a mysterious businessman with a military background. When the loud noise came Yang Chengxi was not far from the scene. In fact, he was very close. The environment of the Changbai Mountain survivor base is very different from that of any young mountain. This mountain, once known for its harsh weather and extreme environment, has now been conquered by humans. Except for the upper unfringed government and military related structures, other locations almost entirely populated by human survivors. The survivor living area of the Changbai Mountain survivor base is, at best, a shack area with a strong apocalyptic cyber style, and at worst, it is an extremely large refugee camp. There are now a huge number of survivors gathered in Changbai Mountain and its surrounding areas. There are more than 800,000 people in the mountains and below. This is definitely a terrifying number. Because of this, the Changbai Mountain survivor base is often quite lively at night, and there is no difference between this time and the day. But the explosion came from the 13 Kings camp. Although the 13 Kings are known as the most powerful survivor organization in Changbai Mountain, and have survivors all over Changbai Mountain, they don't even have a building on the top of the mountain like the Zhejiang group, and the main camp is still within the survivors. Yang Chengxi immediately walked out of his position, took 2 of his men with him, and headed towards the direction of the explosion. Yang Chengxi's presence here is not just here to sell things. The 13 Kings have been making a lot of moves recently. His father said 2 days ago that Yang Chengxi should hang around here more if he has nothing to do. There was a situation in Daxingan today. Yang Chengxi came down immediately. He didn't expect that something really happened here. The explosion was just a prelude. On the way, Yang Chengxi heard gunshots like exploding beans, which kept ringing. The survivors in that direction were all retreating backwards, which made them head towards the direction. Yang Chengxi, who was rushing in the direction, was a little hard to move forward. By the time Yang Chengxi squeezed through the crowd, the gunfire had stopped, the fighting was over, and even the government police force had arrived. When Yang Chengxi came over, he realized that it was not the 13 Kings who took action, but the Mutual Rescue Association. The scene was chaotic. Yang Chengxi grabbed a survivor next to him who was also retreating and asked, "What's going on?" The survivor had been squeezing in front for a long time, but there was no need to squeeze to the back. Now that the situation had stabilized, he was not so anxious anymore. He glanced at Yang Chengxi and said, "I don't know, I don't either. I know, I heard that there was a fight between the Mutual Rescue Association and the 13 Kings." Yang Chengxi let go of the man, glanced slightly at the chaotic crowd, and found an acquaintance. It was a squad leader from the police force who came over. Yang Chengxi went up to him, grabbed the man, and said, "Brother, what's going on?" The team leader has actually been here for a while, but he has never gone inside. He only took his own people and on the edge. This person is also a smart person. He knows that he cannot get involved in this kind of thing, so just being there is enough. The team leader also knew Yang Chengxi, and knew that he was the son of the military daemon. When he saw him, he laughed twice and said, "I don't know very well." The Mutual Rescue Association said that there are infected people in the 13 Kings, and they are related to the intelligent type. The zombies cooperated and took action right away. "Grandma, look at this posture. The 13 Kings are about to end today. This mutual rescue group will either act as a peacemaker and take action. It will be more ruthless than anyone else." Yang Chengxi also noticed that at this moment, a full circle of people surrounded the outer circle of the 13 Kings camp, all of whom were members of the Mutual Rescue Association. It was obvious that the place was completely blocked. There are hundreds of people out there alone. Yang Chengxi's eyes seemed to be condensed, because they didn't even hear any news about this kind of thing in advance. You know, the military and the Mutual Rescue Association still have a cooperative relationship. A military conflict among survivors on this scale can be. It's definitely not a trivial matter. The fighting inside was already coming to an end, and the people from the Mutual Rescue Association were walking out of it aggressively. The first one was actually a boy who looked like a junior high school student, but he was walking at the front. Yang Chengxi knew that person. He was a subordinate of Chu King, the current second in command under Huo Hang Sheng of the Mutual Rescue Association. His name was Huang Liang. Although he was young, he was said to be an awakener. The woman named Chu King was also said to be from Bingcheng. Also stayed at the Ice City survivor base, but she only showed her prominence after coming to Changbai Mountain. She is very skillful. In a very short time, she has a very high status in the Mutual Rescue Association, but she herself is he is mysterious, and has always been reclusive. Many things are handled by this junior high school student. Seeing people from the Mutual Rescue Association coming out, the captain of the police force was shrinking back. He didn't dare to get involved in this kind of thing. It was enough for him to just come, and the rest would naturally be taken care of by the above. If it is handled by others, if he participates randomly, he may die without knowing how he died. But Yang Chengzi couldn't sit still and wait for death. He took a deep breath, walked out from his position, and greeted him. The military cooperated with the Mutual Rescue Association. Of course Huang Liang knew Yang Chengzi. He smiled at Yang Chengzi, stretched out his hand, and shook hands with Yang Chengzi. Without waiting for Yang Chengzi to ask, he already said, 13 kings joining forces with intelligent zombies. We are preparing to harm the Changbai Mountain survivor base at this critical moment, and the Mutual Rescue Association has annihilated them on behalf of the military. After he said these words to Yang Chengzi, he nodded slightly, let go of his hand, passed by Yang Chengzi, and left with his men. He was even a head shorter than Yang Chengzi, but Yang Chengzi was so imposing that he couldn't even lift his head. Only when the other party led the people away did Yang Chengzi come back to his senses. However, the handshake just now. Is it because we are in Changbai Mountain that guy's hands were as cold as death? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 Massacre Scene. Chapter 232 Massacre Scene. This is a massacre. After the Mutual Rescue Club withdrew, Yang Chengzi entered the scene immediately. The 13 kings have actually been in bad shape ever since Li Ziping had a bad encounter with Xia Bai. Although that was not the key to the decline of the 13 kings, it also played a certain role. But the 13 kings are still a force that no one can underestimate in the entire Changbai Mountain survivor base. Therefore, their camp is not small in size, and there are some serious buildings. However, at this moment, the place has been almost wiped out by the Mutual Rescue Club. The Mutual Rescue Club did not rob anything, but only killed people. There are indeed obvious signs of zombie transformation on some individuals, but this is not uncommon in survivor bases. Not every place can be familiar with any young mountain, especially the Changbai Mountain survivor base. This is a territory controlled by the military. Logically speaking, it is the place where security inspections should be carried out. However, because there are so many survivors, it is completely unrealistic to examine them one by one. Therefore, the appearance of zombies among the survivors here is not a particularly surprising thing. This is why the residential areas of large organizations such as the upper level military and government must be completely separated from the residential areas of ordinary survivors here. It is not surprising that a zombie or something comes out. In Yang Chengzi's view, this was more like a premeditated attack. Although this is the camp of the 13 kings, there are too many people from the 13 kings. Not all of the 13 kings are here, but the top leaders of the 13 kings are gathered here. At this moment, almost all of these people were dead. Yang Chengzi saw the true leader of the 13 kings, that was also a top level awakener. Yang Chengzi had seen this person before. There was an obvious scar on his face. When he spoke, the scar trembled like a second mouth on his face, which was extremely ferocious. He was killed by a rocket bomb. The lower half of his body was gone. The upper half of his body flew more than 10 meters away. The scattered organs and blood left a long trace on the ground. He didn't turn into a zombie. The entire camp of the 13 kings was full of corpses. The smell of gunpowder smoke and blood mixed together, giving off a disgusting smell. Yang Chengzi even saw a zombie that was not dead. It may be a zombie that mutated after being shot. Half of its body was pressed under a collapsed board house. When it found a living person from a distance, it roared and struggled to pounce on Yang Chengzi, whose body they were all torn apart inch by inch. Yang Chengzi shot it directly. Yang Chengzi walked around in the 13 kings camp and almost confirmed that, although the Mutual Rescue Association said that infected people appeared here in 13 kings, in fact, infected people did appear here, but fundamentally said This is more like an offensive action by a mutual aid society. They want to take this opportunity, this time when the military is resisting the zombies, and they can't control this time here, to completely wipe out the 13 kings from the Bai Mountain survivor base point. The military also hopes that the 13 kings can be disintegrated, but it will never be in this situation. Yang Chengxi stood in the camp of the 13 kings, feeling slightly frightened and a little unbelievable because for a long time, the Mutual Rescue Association has been a survivor organization that can be on par with the 13 Kings and even has a reputation far above the 13 Kings. But from my city to now, the Mutual Rescue Society has always existed as a non-extremely violent organization. Their existence and behavior are exactly the opposite of those of the 13 Kings, but at this moment, what they did was something that none of the 13 Kings did. If this were placed at any other time, it would definitely be an earth-shattering event. Although this is the end of the world, who dares to kill so many people in Bai Mountain? Regardless of who was killed, neither the military nor the government would tolerate it. Even if the military felt that the disappearance of the 13 kings was a good thing for the entire Bai Mountain, they could not let the Mutual Rescue Association kill people without pursuing them responsibility. But at this moment, the military is also in chaos. Tonight, unexpected changes have occurred on the front line of Daxinganling. This can be seen from the fact that only a small police force from the government came after the Mutual Rescue Group took action. The Mutual Rescue Association has chosen the right time to take action. At this point in time, the military cannot spare its hands. By the time the military does, the matter will be over. After all, the Mutual Rescue Association is also on Bai Mountain. It is a large organization that also cooperates with the military. When the limelight passes for the Mutual Rescue Association, this matter will basically be a thing of the past. But this is the 13 Kings. When did the strength of the Mutual Rescue Association reach this point? Was it possible to defeat the headquarters of the 13 Kings so easily in such a short period of time? Yang Chengxi was indeed a little shocked, even a little scared. This is like a person you know well. He is usually very honest and cowardly and dare not speak loudly to others. But one day you suddenly hear that he killed someone and brutally dismembered his body. It feels the same. First I felt incredible, and then I felt terrified. It's like you suddenly discover that that cowardly honest man is actually a real beast. He used to be a sheep's shell, but he can chew up the unsuspecting you to the bone at any time. The Mutual Rescue Association was first established in Ice City. At the beginning, ordinary survivors helped each other. Yang Chengxi watched the Mutual Rescue Association grow up, although he paid less attention to the Mutual Rescue Association. After arriving in Bai Mountain, he also unexpectedly, the situation and style of the Mutual Rescue Association would undergo such earth-shaking changes, and even the 13 Kings were bloodbathed overnight. How could Yang Chengxi not be surprised? But where did the Mutual Rescue Association get such strong force? Yang Chengxi had heard that Chuking, the new high-ranking member of the Mutual Rescue Association, was a ruthless woman. Her behavior was very different from that of the peaceful Huo Han Sheng. Yang Chengxi still vaguely felt that something was wrong. He planned to go back and use his contacts to check and find out what the current mutual rescue situation was like. At this moment, there was a sound outside, and it was obvious that more relevant personnel had arrived. People from the military, the government, and even people from the medical institutions at the Bai Mountain survivor base. The death of so many people here is definitely a big deal on Bai Mountain. Especially at this juncture, when the wisdom tree zombies are sweeping away the survivors in the 3 eastern provinces, and the Bai Mountain Legion is besieged in the Daxingan Mountains. Yang Chengxi realized that no matter what the situation was outside, from this day on, things would start to change inside Bai Mountain. However, when he walked out of the camp that looked like a massacre of the 13 kings, he suddenly realized that such a big thing had happened here, and no one from the military came. He then changed his color and realized that there might be a bigger situation on Bai Mountain. Thanks to book friend 8,768,767 for the 10,000 reward. Another Hall Master was born in this book. Why do I have so many Hall Masters, and how can I order them all in such a mess? This is unscientific. I will add an update tonight. Chapter 231 I'm willing to help you. Chapter 233 I'm willing to help you. A corner of Changbai Mountain. Huang Liang opened the door of a slightly shabby room and walked in with a bunch of snacks in his hand. There was a young woman in the room. If Xia Bai was here, she might be able to recognize her. This was Chuking, the cheerful girl he had rescued in Bingcheng and wanted to throw herself into his arms. Chuking turned around at the sound and saw a junior high school student walking and carrying something. She exhaled slightly and said, "You guy, you have been missing all day long. Aren't we already the boss of the Mutual Rescue Association? Well, it's enough to be responsible for the popular and spicy food. Why are you running outside, Huang?" Liang smiled slightly. This junior high school student even had a pointed tiger tooth. When he smiled, he was as cute as a young traffic boy. He sat down opposite Chuking, handed over the thing in his hand, and said, "Here, your favorite steamed cake, Chu." King took the thing in his hand and took a look at it. After discovering that it was indeed filled with those yellow pastries, her face couldn't help but bloom with joy. "Oh, my little Huang." Huang is still sensible. Huang Liang said, "How long have we been eating bread before? Why do you still like to eat stuff now, Chu?" King said, "Hey, I just like to eat. Can you care, Huang?" Liang sighed helplessly. Okay, I can't control it. You guys, you are still talking about being my big sister. How can I feel like I'm my father in the end? You kid, do you believe I bit you?" While talking, Chuking had already torn open a packaging bag and ate it one bite at a time. Huang Liang said sorry but didn't answer. He just sat in his seat and silently looked at the woman whose half body was shrouded in shadow. After a moment, he asked, "Does it smell like that, Chu?" King said slightly. There was a certain questioning tone in this hum, and Huang Liang realized that this guy probably didn't hear what he was saying clearly. He sighed again. There was silence in the room for a while. Chuking stuffed something into his mouth and asked vaguely, "If nothing happens, can I go out and walk around, Huang?" Liang glanced at her and said, "Okay, you know, we are in the Mutual Rescue Association now, and it is your name. You are a big shot. There is no place you can't go. But it's best to bring some people, because it's not peaceful recently. Some people want you to die." "Ha, I heard about it too. I'm now a legendary mysterious boss, and my image is still that of a queen. But..." Chuking put down the things in his hands. Half of his body was shrouded in shadow, and he looked at what was in front of him. This person's tone became inexplicably serious. "If I really walk around casually, won't it cause you trouble, Huang?" Liang's eyes fell on Chuking. He was immersed in a peaceful atmosphere and was slightly distracted. He didn't notice the change in Chuking's tone. He smiled and said, "How could that be, Chu?" King lowered his eyes slightly. The light in the room was not very good. It was late at night outside. Only the light of the searchlights placed everywhere in the survivor base was projected through the simple windows. The woman was sitting at the intersection of light and shadow. When she lowered her eyes, her long eyelashes also fell down. The incandescent light shone on them, reflecting the darkness and shadows behind them, as if the woman's eyelashes were filled with light. "I heard something," she said. At this moment, Huang Liang realized the change in the atmosphere in the space. He took a breath and his tone became a little unkind. "What happened? Who told you, Chu?" King didn't answer. The air was stagnant for a moment. Huang Liang took a breath and opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something else, but the only thing that came out in the end was, "I'm sorry, Chu." King looked at the person in front of him silently. Huang Liang was also looking at her. After a moment of silence, King laughed again. "Ha, I don't mean anything else. I'm probably still angry about that matter. I didn't know about you being an awakened person until I got to Changbai Mountain. It's all in vain. I took such good care of you along the way, for fear that you would be picked up by zombies." Huang Liang said, "I'm sorry, Chu." King said, "It's nothing. For the sake of you giving me delicious food every day, I won't pursue it." "Well, if I say I won't pursue it, I really won't pursue it." Huang Liang pursed his lips, looked at her again, hesitated for a moment, then stood up and said, "It's getting late. I'm going back, Chu." King smiled and nodded. Huang Liang also smiled, turned around and walked out. When he reached the door, he heard Chu King's voice again. Hey, Huang Liang, Huang. Liang stopped. Chuking's voice came from behind, still with that warm smile. When we were in Bingcheng before, I said that I was your older sister, and later you also said that you regarded me as your older sister. Then we can be regarded as relatives who are neither relatives nor friends. This kind of wording. Then, no matter what you want to do, your relatives cannot stand opposite you. But there is not only one way to solve problems in this world. We can discuss everything no matter what. Maybe I'm not that smart, but I'm willing to help you. Don't do stupid things. You understand, Huang? Liang was silent for a moment and said, I understand, Chu. King said, is there anything you want to tell me, Huang? Liang did not respond to this sentence. He only said, I'm leaving, sister, and hurriedly opened the door and walked out. Chu King looked at his back and remained silent. Huang Liang walked out, closed the door tightly, and said to the two guards standing outside, if she wants to go out for a walk, don't stop her. The two guards looked at each other, and one of them whispered, I don't know what's the point of keeping her. If someone wants to check us, she may be a breakthrough. Huang Liang took a breath and said, she is a signature. Many people have actually seen her before. Nothing can happen to her, and she has not really disappeared. She is a mysterious figure and cannot be a missing person. After he said this, he stared at the two people in front of him for a moment and then said, whoever dares to touch her, I will burn the whole place with fire. The two guards looked surprised and didn't dare to speak. They just watched Huang Liang turn around and walk away. One of the guards whispered, how did he get to this position when he is so emotional? The other guard was silent for a while and then said, perhaps because of this, it is more like them than us, so it can reach this position. There is one more chapter. It may be a little late. Please wait a moment. Chapter 232 Internal Fighting. Chapter 234 Internal Fighting. June 18, 2019. 3:22, south of Daxinganling Point. At this time, the sky was getting brighter, but the firelight from the forest in the distance had already reflected the sky clearly. The whole world glowed with a dark red color just about 6 or 7 hours ago. A large group of zombies appeared behind Li Jianbei's 37th Division in a manner that could be called magic soldiers descending from the sky and launched an attack. At the same moment, almost all military units on standby outside the Daxinganling battlefield were attacked. A battle line is facing hordes of zombies. The source of the zombies is said to be a passage to the west of the Daxingan Mountains. Judging from the subsequent aerial photography results, a reconnaissance battalion at that location had been wiped out about half a day ago, but it still maintained contact with the military headquarters, and that the location was too far away from the main battlefield, but it was close to the standby division that arrived later, so no one noticed anything unusual. No one would have thought that intelligent zombies would directly lead the zombie tide to attack them. Since the end of the world, although the power of the human military has been weakened, although there are currently 4 reorganized divisions outside the Greater Khingan Range, each division is actually far from reaching the conventional full strength, and they are still outside the Greater Khingan Range. In a completely dispersed state, the attack of the intelligent zombies was more like an egg striking a stone. But that's really what happened. And the intelligent zombies didn't hit the stone with an egg. They didn't know where they got a huge amount of zombies, and they used real human wave tactics. Once the zombies get closer, large-scale bombing may affect our own troops. The most critical thing is that microwave weapons appear on the battlefield. This was something that had been confirmed when a large-scale zombie wave appeared. The microwave weapons in the hands of intelligent zombies seem to have serious flaws. The frequency of microwave radiation fluctuates up and down, like riding a roller coaster. When it is weak, it has no effect at all, but at its strongest, it can reach 92 W/cm2. In the past 7 hours, this value has only been reached in less than half a second, but it still instantly destroyed the warheads of 2 tank-type missile array launchers and triggered a larger explosion. But most of the time, the frequency of the opponent's microwave weapons is still not high, maintaining a state of intermittent signals, and the intelligent zombies use some means to hide the microwave weapons. Excellent. The high-end equipment on their side simply cannot locate the weapon that is continuously functioning. It has been so long since the end of the world. For zombies, it is not surprising to find this thing in a place full of abandoned cities and military equipment. But when the zombies actually attacked him with modern weapons, Xia Bai still had a moment of fear. Incredulous and even panicked. It's a result of ingrained thinking. It's like your dog becoming able to talk overnight. However, this actually has little impact on the battlefield situation. Although Xia Bai was quite surprised by the thing that the intelligent zombie took out as a modern armored division, he has a lot of defensive measures. The outer layer of his command vehicle is an absorbent to the outside world. His armored divisions had almost overwhelming power against zombies. A large group of zombies may be able to surround an armored vehicle, but when tanks and armored vehicles line up in a row and push forward like iron barrels, the zombie wave will be defeated like paper, especially since their station is in an open area without complex terrain intervention. At least for the 37th Division, as long as they have enough ammunition, and regardless of the fatigue of the personnel, they can kill as many zombies as they come and kill them all. Afterwards, he was able to crush all the way over the corpse point. Although other non-armored troops are not so exaggerated, they will not be under too much pressure. It is just that there are too many zombies, which is not an option after all. Moreover, they cannot leave the current front line, because the two divisions in front are now a large-scale dispersed operation is being carried out inside the Daxingen Mountains. If they give way to this front, the zombies will flood into the Daxingen Mountains, and the situation of the two divisions will be dangerous. Therefore, their steps are limited here. But this is actually nothing. Although the number of zombies is large, it is difficult to pose any substantial threat to the several organized divisions. If bombing can be coordinated with fighter jets and several divisions advance together, the casualties can be greatly reduced. Judging from the current situation, although this zombie attack seems massive, it is more like a harassment attack. And the most critical issue is division commander. Our contact with the Xiangbei Mountain headquarters has been interrupted again, and we cannot ensure accurate area enforcement. But what can be confirmed is that the request for reinforcement has been sent, and the nearest reinforcement have moved closer here. Theoretically, it is the same as our nearest 3 or 6. The 9th Army Division's contact with us was completely interrupted about 5 minutes ago. Their communication equipment is not as good as ours. It was severely interfered by the microwave weapons of the intelligent zombies. They can only maintain barely contact with us, which is basically impossible. It is impossible to establish stable communication with other divisions. The 267th Armored Division, where the communication base station built in the center of the defense line is located, has also lost contact long ago. The specific cause and situation of the loss of contact cannot be confirmed. The current internal channel can only ensure stable communication with our nearest 3rd Armored Brigade. Xia Bai was sitting on the edge of the command vehicle's desk. There was a blood stain on his forehead, which was left by his bump when the command vehicle was impacted. When their missile array exploded. The soldier who reported the report seemed a little uneasy. He looked at Xia Bai and whispered something he shouldn't have said. Commander, we can't contact Xiangbei Mountain. Is it possible? Absolutely impossible. Go back to your position. Xia Bai scolded. His eyes darkened. At this moment, he realized the reason for the interruption of contact with Xiangbei Mountain. That was because someone was obstructing it, trying to take advantage of the zombies, consuming the power here. They may have made some assessment that this battle would not lose too many soldiers, but could weaken the enemy's power. Therefore, at this moment, air reinforcement were ejected in this unstable signal manner. This kind of thing cannot withstand investigation. As long as it is blamed on the equipment afterwards, no one can say anything. However, these divisions surrounded the zombies and intelligent zombies in the Greater Kingen Mountains. Their positions were too far apart from each other, but now they have become a constraint. The total length of the Daxingen Mountains is more than 1,200 kilometers. The total blockade front is stretched too long. A large number of zombies have completed the physical segmentation of the front, and communication problems have made the situation even more unfavorable. Air reinforcement cannot be counted on, but each division is fighting on its own. This means that after this battle, even if several divisions can successfully withdraw from the battlefield, they will still face a large number of personnel losses. Who is it? Are you crazy? Internal fighting is internal fighting. The loss of several divisions here is a loss that Xiangbei Mountain cannot afford. It may even turn a good situation into a collapse of the entire army. Li Jianbei's brows were furrowed, and his expression was extremely gloomy. Although he knew that this was the most common method used by top people to consume each other, at this moment, he felt infinite anger in his heart. Well, with 10,000 rewards and more updates, another Hall Master 8,768,767 appears in this book. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Chapter 233, The Surging Tide of Corpses. Chapter 235, The Surging Tide of Corpses. Li Jianbei knew that anger was meaningless, and he must find a way to get out of the immediate predicament with minimal loss. Human strength cannot be compromised in this place, or in this waypoint. There are as many zombies as there are in the northeast. This kind of open field battle seems to be the military massacre of zombies, but it is the perfect combat situation estimated by Li Jianbei, and several military divisions are jointly advancing, supplemented by aerial bombing of Changbei Mountain Point. But now, there are problems with the communication between the various divisions, and they are relatively far apart from each other. They are completely in the middle of the zombie siege, and the pressure they face is much greater than the joint advancement point at Li Jianbei's current position. There is only one armored brigade belonging to the 37th Division, but the number of zombies they face has reached about 50,000 to 60,000. And the new zombies that have poured in are faster than they can kill. The sound has long been connected, but the zombies are still rushing forward without fear of death. After fighting for 7 hours, the intelligent zombies seemed to have realized that the military's air support would not arrive, and they were still importing zombies in a steady stream. The number of zombies on the battlefield had reached an unprecedented scale. If anyone looked down from the sky at this moment, you can find that the entire non-military area of the battlefield is filled with densely packed human heads. Armor divisions like his are okay and can still keep out zombies, but other infantry divisions are probably now in close contact with the zombie tide. As time goes by, even if they can escape unscathed, they will definitely suffer a big loss. However, what Li Jianbei was thinking at the moment was, how could intelligent zombies move so many zombies in such a short period of time? From the relaxed attitude when the zombies appeared at the beginning, to the anger when he realized that someone was trying to trick him in Changbei Mountain, to this moment, Li Jianbei had vaguely realized that something was wrong. The actions on the Changbei mountainside aroused anger, but went to Li Jianbei's mind. It was only at this moment that he vaguely felt that something was wrong. The intelligent zombies brought so many zombies to attack the organizers. It didn't seem to be a reckless move out of mind, but a real big move. Intelligent zombies don't know much about military weapons, but they bring nearly 1 million zombies to harass them. This is probably not very realistic. Li Jianbei took a deep breath, and at this moment, another urgent battle report came up to the east of the battlefield, in the southeast direction of the 37th Division, in the direction of the central 267th Armored Division. A large Type 3 virus-infected body appeared. In the last life, when intelligent zombies appeared, Type 3 virus infections had already been intercepted by the military outside the coastline. Type 3 virus infections rarely appeared in inland areas, but in this life, the situation is obviously different. Intelligent zombies may not have any cutting-edge technological weapons, but they do possess biological and chemical weapons, just like what the little boy intelligent zombie said in Zoo City. Extreme mutants are like wild beasts. It's easy to tame them, as long as you are a zombie yourself. Li Jianbei had never heard of these remarks, but he knew that the emergence of Type 3 virus infection on the battlefield meant that this attack by intelligent zombies was by no means a simple harassment attack. Some big shots in the Changbei Mountains thought wrong, and even Li Jianbei himself thought wrong. The commanders at the scene believed that this was a time when the zombies were asking for trouble, and some people in Changbei Mountain wanted to take this opportunity to slightly consume the arms and power of Yang Wenshan's group. But the intelligent zombies, this attack was obviously intended to keep them all here and kill them all. Millions of zombies are a human seed tactic, and Type 3 virus infected bodies are the cannon that can overwhelm the human front. They were indeed testing at first, but as time goes by, if something goes wrong, they may give up immediately. However, intelligent zombies have seen opportunities, and they are indeed prepared so the power they put into the battlefield is becoming more and more powerful. Coming stronger and stronger. A prepared person may not be able to defeat an unprepared person, but he may not be defeated by a quarrelsome person. Li Jianbei's heart sank all the way. Type 3 virus infected bodies have one characteristic: extreme mutation, rapid regeneration, and extraordinary strength. When they move, they are like a mobile kinetic cannon. Most of the formed type 3 virus infected bodies have a twisted and ferocious appearance, and have all kinds of weird things depending on the functions of the mutated organs. Ability point: this kind of thing can cause a devastating blow to an entire large-scale human combat team in a short period of time. The kind of strollers in Bincheng before were the best among them. At this moment, in the picture transmitted back to the command vehicle, a type 3 virus infected body was walking through the tide of corpses from a distance. It looks like a huge mountain of meat, with some kind of black armor similar to a shield growing on the front. It should be some kind of horny structure produced after withstanding human blows. Ordinary caliber bullets or even just it can leave a shallow mark on this layer of armor, and its rear body looks like a 1,000-legged monster. In the fleshy bull-like body, there are countless arms stretched out densely, waving its teeth and claws, and its sensory organs are born from these arms, and there are also a large number of things similar to snail horns. It is disgusting and ugly to the extreme, but it moves extremely fast all over the body. Countless arms on it were tumbling up and down, and its body moved forward like a sarcoma tank. The zombies along the way were easily opened and torn apart by it. They were even torn apart randomly by it during its high-speed advance and sent into the armor, with the sarcoma in the lowermost feeding organ point. But in the battlefield, this extreme mutant is not the only type 3 virus infected body. They are advancing in this direction. The zombie flesh and blood flying under the cannons and the living breath of the human soldiers here are. To them it's like a delicious meal with an alluring aroma. But the sarcoma-like creature was advancing so fast that without Li Jianbei's order, the troops in front had already seen it and opened fire instantly. On this side, Li Jianbei did not pay too much attention to the situation here. When they discovered these extreme mutants, they had already ordered free fire. To intercept these creatures, Li Jianbei directly opened the electronic map and issued orders through the internal channel to the commanders at all levels of the division who were present and absent. He glanced at the map and said, "Command headquarters, we are now moving west and advancing with all our strength. Try to rendezvous with the 369th Division in the shortest possible time. At the same time, gather the rocket launchers for me and clear an open space to the west. Let me hit the cloud blast bomb we brought with us from a long distance on the front battlefield." He said this and paused slightly. "Let all our soldiers on the frontal battlefield retreat. I don't care how capable the technical team is. Let them calculate clearly for me. I want the cloud explosion bomb to fall where I'm pointing, in this position. At the same time, every soldier in our 37th Division knows what we are going to do. Our focus is not to clear a no man's land, but to tell all the brothers and other troops that we are here. We have used a large amount of power, and now we are starting to get real." However, at this moment, Li Jianbei suddenly heard a loud noise coming from the front of the position. A fleshy bull-like type 3 virus infected body withstood the 2 salvos of 3 tanks. Its skin and flesh were torn, and it crashed into the steel array in front of the 37th Division, tearing the battlefield apart in an instant. There was a whole point Li Jianbei never expected, that 3 tanks and 3 125mm caliber tank guns could not stop an extreme mutant. This is the firepower he transferred. According to the previous battle situation along the coast of Bincheng, this firepower may not be able to kill a type 3 virus infected body, but it is enough to paralyze it on the spot. 3 125mm caliber guns fired 2 salvos. Even if 1 or 2 shots were missed, even a building would be destroyed. That was a 125mm caliber. When fired, the ground would shake. But at this moment, looking at the scene in front of him, Li Jianbei couldn't help but utter a curse word. Is his grandma a living organic creature? Please subscribe to the official version. Brothers, I will burst into tears. Chapter 234 in Kisheng. Chapter 236 in Kisheng at 4:22 on June 18, 2019. Dawn has arrived at the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base, and the distant sky of Changbai Mountain is brilliant point, just as Li Jianbei's troops were moving closer to the 369th Division, and Kizheng was sitting in his safe house and had just lit a cigar. And Kizheng is 43 years old this year. At this age, he is already middle-aged among ordinary people, but for a military and political personnel, and Kizheng is still very young. He looks ordinary, but he is actually one of the most powerful people in the entire Changbai Mountain Survivor Base. In such a country and such an organization, everything depends on qualifications, and qualifications mean experience and ability on the one hand, and connections and background on the other, both of which are very important. And he was lucky. Before the end of the world, he successfully stood up and became a big figure in an emerging faction. He had a place in the Northeast military region at a young age. After the end of the world, this place quickly became his important capital for the rise. For some people, the end of the world is an absolute disaster, but for people like Kizheng, it is an opportunity for promotion. It is now 2019, the second year of the apocalypse, but Kizheng has not shot and killed any zombies. He has not even faced a zombie head on. But this does not prevent him from firmly occupying a high position in Changbai Mountain and competing against the veteran Yang Wenshan's faction. The world has always been like this. If you work hard, you may not succeed, and if you work hard, you may not live as well as others who don't work hard. You have to learn how to survive on your own before you can do the right thing. Those who say that after the end of the world the social system will collapse and ordinary people can become military bosses, it is all nonsense. Unless one day, all the soldiers die, leaving only ordinary people on the ground. Before the apocalypse, opportunities belong to the strong, and after the apocalypse is an opportunity for some people, but the prerequisite is that you must be a strong person. And Kizheng is a strong man. When the end of the world comes, so does his opportunity. He took a puff of cigarette and slowly exhaled it. Today is a chaotic day. Outside Changbai Mountain, the military forces in Daxing encountered unexpected and huge troubles. Zombies arrived at the rear of the human army from a passage where the military was originally stationed. However, the communication between Changbai Mountain and the Daxing troops has been interrupted intermittently. However, since the end of the world, most of the devices in this world that used to be very useful are no longer very useful. Now they can't contact each other. Who knows why? The entire military is in turmoil over this. Although there is no way to confirm the exact information on the ground, the latest bombing formation has also been dispatched. They will provide reinforcement support based on the situation on the scene, but in the face of a large tide of corpses and corpses mixed in, for the human army in the middle of the tide, fighter planes can provide limited support in the air unless ground troops conduct manual guided bombing. In Changbai Mountain, and Kizheng believes that many people today will not find Yang Wenshan, the nominal supreme commander of the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base, because just 8 hours ago, when an abnormal situation had just occurred in the Greater Khingan Mountains and the information had not been sent back, and Kizheng had a talk with Yang Wenshan. And Kizheng was not present at that conversation. As for where Yang Wenshan went, who knows? With the large-scale movements of intelligent zombies in the 3 eastern provinces, and Kizheng and Yang Wenshan have already made an agreement and redeployed their military, a large part of Yang Wenshan's troops have been dispatched. Most of Changbai Mountain is now full of zombies, and Kizheng's army. Yang Wenshan can't be found, just can't be found. And today it is said that there was a big mess on the pretext of clearing out the zombies in the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base. The Mutual Rescue Association killed everyone in the 13 Kings camp and began to clear out and encircle the remaining forces of the 13 Kings and the entire Changbai Mountain area overnight. This situation has been reported for a long time, but Kizheng prefers to rescue and support the Daxing area. At present Changbai Mountain has become a mess, but Kizheng is still sitting firmly in this one. Every message is transmitted through encrypted channels, and his orders are transmitted from this moment. The command center hopes that Kizheng can going to the command center to conduct on-site command operations, and Kizheng's answer was very clear before communication is established. It doesn't make sense where he is. Moreover, he has deliberately sent out a message to explain why he hid in the safe house. It is said that intelligent zombies have appeared in Bai Mountain, trying to confuse the situation inside Bai Mountain at this time, and even carry out beheading operations. Are there intelligent zombies in Bai Mountain? Of course there is, but are they wreaking havoc? I'm afraid not. This is the news that Nkisheng released by himself. This can not only provide a source of sound for the Mutual Rescue Association that is currently acting recklessly in the Bai Mountain survivor camp, but it will also have unimaginable effects in the future. Everyone knows that the Mutual Rescue Association belongs to Yang Wenshan, but right now, the Mutual Rescue Association is working for Nkisheng. There was chaos outside, but Nkisheng was smoking a cigar and reading a book in the safe house. He was in Kigo Higashino's White Night Walk. Today, the night in Bai Mountain is more lively than the day. Bai Mountain is about to change. At this moment, a phone call disturbed Nkisheng's elegance. He answered the phone unhappily and heard a slightly green but emotionless voice on the other side. Nkisheng, 2 months ago. Within this period, the 13 kings will be completely removed from Bai Mountain. Nkisheng remembered this voice. It was the voice of Huang Liang from the Mutual Rescue Association. However, in order to clear up the relationship, he never directly contacted people from the Mutual Rescue Association. What happened? Your online should be Zhu Liang's Heng. It's okay. Who told you to call me directly? There was a slight silence on the other side before responding. I just remind you that I'm doing what we are doing, and we are cooperating with you, not with the Zhu group. Don't forget what you should do. Nkisheng's face looked a little ugly. He pursed his lips and remained silent for a moment. The light in his eyes was dark and fierce. Then, he said, I will not forget what I should do, but you should also not forget who you are. In Bai Mountain, you have to shrink your head. There was silence for a while, and then the call was cut off. Nki was silent for a while, crushing the cigarette butt in the ashtray. His expression looked indifferent, but there was some kind of frightening cold light in the deepest part of his eyes. He glanced at the other side and lowered his hands to wait. One of his loyal subordinates said solemnly, it's time for us to finish this. Paragraph involves Nkisheng's plan, which is not clearly stated, but the information has been almost given. Some book friends may have already figured it out. Don't worry if you don't see it clearly, it will all become clear later. In addition, the protagonist seems to have been offline for a long time. Chapter 235 Xia Bai is very busy. Chapter 237 Xia Bai is very busy. June 18, 2019 at 7:11 am. Yesterday's night may have been a sleepless night for many people, but for Xia Bai, he had a good sleep. Xia Bai went to bed after the beating at around 9 o'clock on the 17th, and he just woke up now. So, he doesn't know anything at the moment. Of course, Xia Bai had no intention of knowing anything. Because Xia Bai is very busy. When he woke up in the morning, he took another look at his more than 70,000 energy points. Looking at the display screen, his face almost burst into laughter. Then he washed, brushed his teeth, and prepared to eat in the canteen on Anyang Mountain. In fact, Xia Bai can eat in the battleship, but he has to go to the public canteen in Anyang Mountain to eat every day. This is Huang Qiulan's instructions to Xia Bai, saying that although he wants to be a hands-off shopkeeper, it is necessary to show up every day. Otherwise, in 2 days the sense of existence will be gone, and who will know who he is? Although Xia Bai is lazy, it still makes sense. If he doesn't brush up his presence frequently, even the protagonist of the novel may change from the protagonist to a supporting role. What's more, in this apocalyptic era, whoever is stronger is the boss. Therefore, it is still necessary to go to the canteen to eat. And Xia Bai also caught up with a good show today. As soon as he stepped through the door of the cafeteria, he heard Chen Yingying and Yi Hanayu arguing. You drank for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, during the day, and at night. Did you drink the wine as plain water? Go, little girl, this stuff is delicious, especially the white wine. I blackmailed this bottle from Kyo Deming yesterday. What is it called? I don't know how expensive it is before the end of the world. Come and try it. Taste. Hey, you guy. Kyo Deming. Kyo Deming is too useless. Why? Are you scolding me? I'm the one looking for you. No, you just can't drink. I am an awakened person. Drinking this thing is just like boiled water. Not even the awakened ones. Do you believe that I will go find Sister Bailan? Oh, don't go to Bailan. Don't go to Bailan. You can say anything. I won't drink. No, I won't drink. If I drink another bottle. What? You want another bottle? The place where these two people quarreled was actually in the corner of the restaurant, but the sound was too loud. Yi Hanai was also a very famous public figure in Anyang Mountain. When these two people quarreled, the human nature of eating melons was awakened in the restaurant of Nuoda, but there was no sound. Everyone was listening with their ears cocked point, but listening to this conversation, many survivors present showed some envy and jealousy. Drinking white wine as boiled water is still good wine. This is something that many alcoholics cannot dream of before the end of the world. However, Kyo Deming in the corner couldn't help but shrink his neck. Zukyo Kyo next to him glared at him and said, "Isn't that the bottle of Wulian Guy worth tens of thousands of dollars that you hid privately? Last time I wanted to take a sip but you didn't. Jane, why did you give this to that girl like this?" Kyo Deming seemed to be afraid that Chen Yingying would find out that he was at the scene. He made a booing gesture to Zukyo Kyo and said, "That girl lay down at my door at 12 o'clock last night. How can I fix her if I don't give her some blood?" When Zukyo Kyo heard this, her face suddenly looked strange and said, "Yi Hanayu, she is lying in front of your door at 12 o'clock in the evening." This, Kyo Deming's expression changed again. "Go, we have nothing to do, so don't think too much." Xia Bai didn't hear Kyo Deming's conversation with Zukyo Kyo in the corner, but Chen Yingying and Yi Hanayu were too eye-catching. Xia Bai thought for a moment and glanced at Yi Hanayu, who was drunk. He understands Yi Hanayu's character, and Chen Yingying is the only one who can say a few words at this moment. Bailan may be able to control her, but if it were anyone else, even him, he would probably be driven out by this girl's drunkenness. Xia Bai looked at himself, then went to get food honestly, then sat in the corner and took a bite by himself. Ever since the sweet potatoes were grown in Anyang Mountain, breakfast had originally consisted of rare and thin porridge, but now it has become roasted sweet potatoes. The cafeteria in Anyang was renovated from the original hotel restaurant into a window serve mode. Most of the people working here are older people who are unable to do heavy physical work and have no other specialties. Xia Bai comes every morning, and most of the people here know him. The aunt who cooked the meal specially brought the largest sweet potato to Xia Bai and smiled at Xia Bai, which made Xia Bai feel a little hairy. Of course, there are advantages to Xia Bai appearing in the restaurant to eat every day, but there are also disadvantages. That is, there are always some random people who want to have a relationship. Xia Bai is actually a mysterious figure in Anyang Mountain. Many people think that Xia Bai is a murderous person who is difficult to interact with. Especially when Xia Bai appears in public, he is usually stern and unsmiling. Therefore, although many people hope to have something to do with Xia Bai, the actual controller of Anyang Mountain, few people dare to take the initiative to talk to Xia Bai. But this doesn't mean that no one dares to come to Xia Bai to have a relationship. For example, some girls today, Yi Hanai was arguing with Chen Yingying over there. Xia Bai found a corner and sat down quietly. A girl came over, and her face was painted like a goblin. She kept chattering in front of Xia Bai, but Xia Bai kept his head down. He gnawed the sweet potato without saying a word to her, for fear that Chen Yingying would find him and ask him to solve Yi Hanayu, a big trouble that Xia Bai thought was more terrifying than Rambler. But Xia Bai couldn't really sit still for too long. He gnawed the sweet potatoes for a while and listened silently to the crosstalk-like conversation between Yi Hanayu and Chen Yingying. Finally, he sighed slightly and raised his head from the sweet potatoes. At that moment, the fairy-like girl in front of him thought that Xia Bai was finally talking to him, and her face showed joy. But only Xia Yike and Xia Bai stood up, ignored the woman in front of him, and walked towards Yi Hanayu over there. On this side, the fairy-like girl was slightly stunned. And here, Xia Bai was crossing half of the Anyang canteen and stood steadily in front of Yi Hanayu. To be honest, Yi Hanayu is really good looking. Even if she has no image at all at the moment, she is still prettier than the fairy just now. Yi Hanyu was slightly stunned when she saw Xia Bai coming over. Xia Bai glanced at her, sighed, and said, "Stop drinking here, let's go. If you have nothing to do, how about you go out with me to kill zombies today?" Changbai Mountain is in chaos, and Xia Bai is solving Yi Hanyu's personal problems. Chapter 236. What is that? Chapter 238. What is that? Yi Hanyu drank a lot, but she was not drunk. With the guy like Chen Yingying following him, although Yi Hanyu felt that she had been drinking for a long time, the most drowsy period was actually last night. After a while, she woke up from the alcohol. Most of the time, I didn't actually drink much afterward. Although Yi Hanyu's drinking capacity is not very good, she is an awakener. She recovers quickly and sobers up quickly. She didn't really want to quarrel with Chen Yingying here, but she was really worried and had nothing to do. Moreover, Chen Yingying could be said to be the person closest to her now. Besides Chen Yingying, there really wasn't anyone else to argue with. Until now, Xia Bai stood in front of her. I don't know why. Maybe because of what Xia Bai said last night about "you are mine, no one can touch you." Now Yi Hanyu feels a little restrained when she sees Xia Bai. No, Yi Hanyu doesn't really want to see Xia Bai now. Therefore, when Xia Bai stood in front of her, the first thing she thought of was, when did this guy come? What Yi Hanyu resisted was not Xia Bai, but Xia Bai's kindness. In fact, Yi Hanyu actually likes Xia Bai quite a lot. Although many people in Anyang Mountain think that Xia Bai is like an executioner, Yi Hanyu knows better what kind of person Xia Bai is: sunny, enthusiastic, and responsible. Women always like men with a sense of responsibility. Of course, Yi Hanyu's liking is not that kind. However, who knows about this kind of thing? But Xia Bai's kindness made Yi Hanyu heavy. Although Yi Hanyu seemed like a naive little girl, she actually knew everything. She avoided Bailan not because she was really afraid of Bailan, but because she was afraid of Bailan. She knew that Bailan was really good to her when she was in Chenggayu Middle School. The reason why she became the eldest sister in the school was that no one cared about her and no one cared about her. The reason why bad kids became bad kids was often due to their family environment. Determined by the growth environment. Yi Hanyu's madness seems more like she is looking for a sense of existence for herself. Her family has 2 children, and there is a younger brother below her, and her family's attitude towards the 2 children is like a choice after the end of the world. The same thing, before Yi Hanyu had time to go home, her family members had left early, and no one came to look for her. I have said before that after the apocalypse broke out, Yi Hanyu returned to her home, but the room was empty. Although she told others that her parents should be dead, there was no blood or signs of fighting in the room. Yi Hanyu noticed that all her mother's favorite gold jewelry had been taken away, and she immediately understood what was going on. Before the end of the world, Yi Hanyu often hung out with those sisters because she could feel the warmth and care from them. Of course, the care between peers was often rough, and those sisters were not very old, not even as old as Yi Hanyu. Mature, Yi Hanyu is more like their caregiver and sister. When the end of the world came, Yi Hanyu thought that she and her sisters could continue to depend on each other like this, and she didn't feel that such a life was bad. Yi Hanyu herself was an awakened person, and she was confident that she could protect everyone. But later, the students from Chenggayu Middle School fire completely shattered all Yi Hanyu's illusions. She felt unspeakable frustration and sadness at night. She even wanted to die. Some people say that living is for the sake of living, but Yi Hanyu doesn't think this sentence has any meaning. Just like Yi Hanyu said to Xia Bai outside the gas station between Ji Province and Liao Province a long time ago, she is not afraid of death because she can't find the meaning of her survival. Girls aged 16 or 17 always like to think wildly. Yi Hanyu rarely accepts care from others. At home, her parents are more considerate of her younger brother. At school, her teachers are helpless towards him. The only care she was used to came from her sisters, who were not even as mature as she was. Therefore, when Xia Bai and Bailan showed concern for her, Yi Hanyu seemed a little at a loss and didn't know how to deal with it. Yi Hanyu is a smart little girl. She can see that Baeline loves her and treats her as her sister, while Xia Bai is a sunny and enthusiastic guy who cares about all his own people. Yi Hanai who didn't know how to deal with this kind of concern, so she often seemed a little at a loss, even more so now. When Xia Bai separated from the crowd and came over to say those words, Yi Hanai was a little confused. She said blankly, "Huh? Killing zombies? Me?" Xia Bai looked at such a silly girl in front of him. Perhaps because of drinking, Yi Hanai's face looked flushed, and coupled with her slightly dull expression at the moment, she looked very cute. Xia Bai didn't mean to say any more, because with Xia Bai standing up now, it could be said that it attracted the attention of everyone in the room. Xia Bai didn't want to cause any trouble, so he directly picked up Yi Hanai and walked out. Yi Hanai, an awakened person, was easily pulled up by Xia Bai. After walking for more than 10 meters, she finally realized, "Hey, I want to talk to Captain Lu today. I'll go say hello to Captain Lu." Xia Bai paused slightly and said, "Xiansheng and Li Jinggang are both busy today. I'm driving a battleship out to kill zombies, and there must be someone to help me. Anyway, you also idle. Hey, if you put it this way, wouldn't it be?" Yi Hanai was pulled forward by Xia Bai and stumbled forward. She was still holding Kyo Deming's tens of thousands bottle of Wulian Guy in her hand, but her face was a little red for no reason. Doesn't that mean that there are only 2 of them today? And at this time, there was someone in the corner of the cafeteria who shouted, overbearing president. After such a meaningless sentence, the expressions of the Melaneaters in the silent cafeteria gradually became more subtle. Yi Hanai's face turned even redder, and Xia Bai's pace inexplicably sped up by half a minute point. In the corner, Kyo Deming pushed Tsukio's head down and said, "What are you doing? What are you shouting for? What are you shouting? Of course you are shouting about the domineering president. Who asked you what you were shouting about?" Kyo Deming was about to press his head to the ground, fearing that Xia Bai would find out that the noise was coming from their side, and let Xia Bai know that Yi Hanai's whine also came from him. What kind of trouble will it cause later? Be honest, tch. Tsukio curled her lips and looked at Kyo Deming with a look of disdain. "Uncle, why do I feel that you are getting lower and lower? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 237, Xia Bai's Day. Chapter 239, Xia Bai's Day. Yi Hanai hasn't been on Xia Bai's battleship for a long time. The last time she boarded the battleship was when she was in Buncheng Point, and there were only her and Xia Bai in the battleship, which had never happened before. Therefore, whether it was because of drinking too much or because of the boss's unreasonable words in the cafeteria, Yi Hanai was a little nervous and her heartbeat was a little fast. And Xia Bai's behavior is still very domineering. He took Yi Hanai out of the cafeteria and directly let Alpha control the battleship located in the air raid shelter at the back. He boarded the battleship directly in front of the cafeteria, under the gazes of passers-by, A, B, and D. He slowly took off into the air and rushed directly towards the sky. The survivors on the street looked at such a scene with an expression of normality. But in the corner, there was a person who silently watched the scene in front of him, turned his head directly, and ran towards the former hotel housing area at the back, which is now the survivor gathering area. His purpose was very clear, and he found the person he was looking for after a long and winding journey. If Ziyacheng were here, he would probably be able to recognize that person as the subordinate Chen Guangao brought with him last night. At this moment, the man running from the cafeteria saw the subordinate and whispered something. The man nodded, narrowed his eyes slightly, and there was a dangerous light in his eyes at the same moment. Xia Bai's battleship was sailing out of the inner circle of the Anyang Mountain survivor base. Yi Hanai hasn't seen Xia Bai much recently, and she doesn't know exactly what Xia Bai does in her day. Of course, she has this opportunity today. Xia Bai's killing of zombies has always been very regular. In the past, Xia Bai's leveling point was Shengjing City, but after Anyang Mountain was besieged by zombies, this situation changed a little. Xia Bai's warship sailed out of the wall outside Anyang Mountain and landed immediately. That's right. Xia Bai's battleship pressed against the wall of Anyang Mountain, and with the shield of the battleship, it plunged from the sky into the tide of corpses crowding the wall below. Xia Bai directly drove the battleship, controlling the position of the battleship to only about 1 meter above the ground, and started to advance in a circle around the entire wall with the shining shield. On this road, Xia Bai directly crushed them all the way. There were a huge number of zombies, but they were no longer able to pose any threat to Xia Bai's battleship. They were unable to intercept Xia Bai's battleship, and were directly hit and crushed to death by Xia Bai. Moreover, Xia Bai didn't fire at all during the whole process, and only relied on battleships and shields to crush him, leaving a bloody channel of scorch marks and corpses, blood and bones on the ground. Yi Hanai was shocked when she saw this scene. She really didn't expect that Xia Bai's zombie killing had reached this point. This is just crushing them with a battleship. The soldiers of the Anyang Mountain Guard on the wall are already used to it. The ferocity of the founder of their own survivor base and his battleships has long been known to everyone in Anyang Mountain. This is now one of Xia Bai's routine zombie killing procedures in Anyang Mountain. He rolled around here for a long time, creating a vacuum on the ground and bringing it out before taking off again. However, this zombie vacuum will soon be filled by more zombies. Xia Bai did this mainly to reduce the frontal pressure on the Anyang Mountain Guards, but also to weaken the number of zombies in the front, so as to avoid more zombies will come in the future, directly posing an excessive threat to Anyang Mountain. When Xia Bai's battleship took off, Yi Hanai also saw Xia Cheng's figure on the wall. This guy stood on the top of the wall, raised his arms, and shouted at the battleship to sacrifice the engine. As Xia Bai's coming here to crush zombies every day became a regular, Xia Cheng would definitely appear here at this time every day, for no other reason than to increase his sense of existence and prove to Xia Bai that he was fulfilling his duties. Of course, this kind of showmanship means nothing to Xia Bai. Xia Bai knew very well who Xia Cheng was. He was a man who cheated, and ran faster than a rabbit when he saw danger. This kind of person was a typical wallflower. Whoever was strong was his loyal subordinate. I never take sides, of course. Xia Bai is not worried about how to deal with this. This is not something Xia Bai should worry about. Although Xia Bai seems to still be the leader of Anyang Mountain, in fact, he has already delegated a large amount of power to Huang Qiulan. Huang Qiulan himself. There is also a team. Xia Bai rarely intervenes in the internal situation of Anyang Mountain except for really big things, let alone anything. Of course, this was because Xia Bai didn't bother to care at all. As long as Anyang Mountain is a safe place, with food and drink, and an army that can be cultivated for oneself, that is enough. After Xia Bai crushed the zombies, he rose from the sky and arrived outside Anyang Mountain. In just a few days, zombies were almost everywhere in Anyang Mountain, from the mountain walls to the outside of the mountain. Despite this, there was still a steady stream of zombies coming from the direction of Shengjing City, coming from the sky. From a bird's eye view, these zombies are like black rivers on the earth, meandering and converging. Xia Bai did not dare to open fire on the mountain for fear of damaging the mountain structure, but it didn't matter. At the foot of the mountain, he circled the area under the mountain and swept the circle with the battleship's artillery before slowly raising the battleship. From the perspective of protecting Anyang Mountain, Xia Bai's best choice is to spend the whole day intercepting zombies outside Anyang Mountain. However, the concentration of zombies here is not as high as in Shengjing City, and the zombies on the mountain are in swarms. It's not easy to fire. At the end of the day, you have to spend a lot of effort hunting zombies, but you can't get many energy points from a long-term perspective. Upgrading the 5th level battleship is far more meaningful than cleaning up the corpse tide in Anyang Mountain day and night. Moreover, the corpse tide in Anyang Mountain also originated from Shengjing City. Therefore, Xia Bai mainly upgrades his level every day. Still in the direction of Shengjing City. Therefore, after the short massacre, Xia Bai directly turned the warship and sailed towards Shengjing City. But Yi Hanai's slightly beating heart, sitting in the back, calmed down somewhat point, because she suddenly realized that, although she and Xia Bai were the only two people in the battleship, judging from the current situation, at least judging from the zombie hunting around Anyang Mountain this morning, Xia Bai was completely I'm just more interested in hunting zombies. Yihan grinded her teeth inexplicably. She took a look through the porthole and saw that the ground beneath her feet was filled with large swaths of zombies. Chapter 238 The boat capsized. Chapter 240 The boat capsized. Guo Junming was staring into the distance. In Shengjing City Point he took a look, and behind him were 3 other people wearing ragged clothes. They looked like ordinary survivors trapped in Shengjing City Point, but Guo Junming knew that they were not ordinary survivors. They come from the Changbai Mountain survivor base. There are 4 of them in total, and everyone is an awakener. They appear here, disguised as ordinary survivors, with only one purpose: kill Xia Bai, the current main person in charge of the Anyang Mountain survivor base. Changbai Mountain is still quite far away from Anyang Mountain. Guo Junming and his group originally had 6 awakened people, and 2 of them even died on the road. But before they came here, they still got to know Xia Bai. Anyang Xia Bai and his battleship are no longer a secret now. Guo Junming knows that, although he is an awakened person, he cannot face a battleship with a high strength shield head on. A forceful attack is unrealistic, but some tactics can be used. Guo Junming's eyes were heavy. According to the intelligence information, Xia Bai would provide a helping hand to any weak survivors wherever he met, and would even take them back to Anyang Mountain. Guo Junming's plan came from this key information. The outside of the battleship cannot be penetrated, but as long as he can enter the battleship, there are 4 awakened ones. Can't you keep the people inside submissive? Thinking of this, Guo Junming couldn't help but curl up into a sneer. I heard that Xia Bai is also an awakened person, but he has 4 awakened people here. Even if the opponent is a top awakened person, he will be finished. When the time comes, they can seize the battleship and bring it all the way back to Changbai Mountain, and they will be able to achieve success all the way and live a more unrestrained life in Changbai Mountain under the apocalypse than before the apocalypse. A few hours ago, Guo Junming had received a message from his own people inside Anyang Mountain, learning that Xia Bai had set off, and more than 10 minutes ago, the sound of cannons and heavy gunfire rang out from the far end of the city. There were no military troops in the area around Shengjing City, and the sound of gunfire only meant that Xia Bai had arrived. At that moment, they lit a fire directly on the roof of a building in Shengjing City as a signal to attract the arrival of Xia Bai and his battleship. Shengjing City is definitely a den of corpses, with zombies everywhere. They don't know how much experience it took to get to this relatively safe building, but the situation seems to be developing in the direction most beneficial to Guo Junming. Xia Bai obviously noticed the situation here. The sound of gunfire was getting closer and closer, and soon, the battleship that was more than 20 meters long came through the sky from far away. The battleship was sharp and powerful, with densely packed gun barrels, like a black hedgehog flying in the sky, which was extremely dangerous. Seeing such a big thing, Guo Junming couldn't help but take a breath. At this time, a brother behind him whispered, "Boss, tell me, does such a big spaceship have any weapons or countermeasures in it?" Guo Junming glared at him. 20 meters long is called big? Although the information did not indicate the state of the thing inside. Have you ever seen any aircraft with a self-propelled cannon in the cabin? Do you think it is Star Wars? The brother slapped his mouth and became silent. There is actually a reason for Guo Junming's tone of voice to be unfriendly, because at this moment, he also has this worry. Although he had seen pictures of Xia Bai's battleships in intelligence before, there was still a difference between seeing them and actually seeing them. It was just like looking at a tank in an album and seeing a tank in action in reality. Although they are all exactly the same tanks, they give people completely different feelings. Especially Xia Bai's battleship has a sharp and chilling feeling. At this time, on Xia Bai's battleship, a ray of light suddenly projected from the sky. Guo Junming tensed up slightly like a reflex, but he quickly realized that this was the tractor beam of the Anyang battleship mentioned in the intelligence. The light of the tractor beam tower flashed 4 times, and Guo Junming and others all arrived on the battleship. There are many weapon systems and functional modules in the 4th level battleship, but the battleship is relatively small in size. Therefore, the internal space for human activities in the battleship form is quite small, and can even be described as clear at a glance. Guo Junming discovered this the first time he boarded the battleship, and he immediately realized that there seemed to be no one on the battleship point, because at this moment, there was only a petite looking little girl standing in front of them, sitting there smoking idly. Guo Junming's anxious heart suddenly calmed down. In such a narrow space, how could there be any built-in weapon system? And there is obviously no one in the battleship. Since the landing has been successful, then, brothers, do it. Junming shouted and took out a gun from his waist. Although he was an awakened person, this did not mean that awakened people did not use guns. However, as soon as he shouted, took out his gun, and was about to fire, the situation changed. Directly above his head, and directly behind their group of people, a metal layer suddenly descended from top to bottom, directly sealing the four of them in a small confined space. Guo Junming suddenly changed his color. In the next moment, a large amount of paralyzing gas began to spew out from the walls around them. Although these awakened people had strong tolerance, Xia Bai used a large dose of anesthetic gas. Within a few seconds, the four awakened ones fell down one after another, their bodies hitting the ground below and becoming motionless in the last moment. When Guo Junming completely lost consciousness, what he thought was, "It's over, he's done it." At the same moment, in the battleship cabin front, Xia Bai glanced at the several people lying on the ground in the picture, returned by the internal monitoring system, and sighed slightly. The space inside the battleship is small and there are no weapon systems, but this does not mean that the battleship has no countermeasures function inside. Although the current 4th level battleship still looks a bit shabby, it is a battleship after all, and internal combat measures and defense functions are also inevitable. Regardless of whether you are an awakened person or someone else, you can't break through the shield of the battleship outside, and you can't even think about causing any trouble if you get inside the battleship. In fact, Xia Bai had long realized that these people were not good people. This group of people had a good idea. They pretended to be survivors and entered the battleship, but they could catch Xia Bai by surprise. However, Xia Bai has been wandering around Shengjing City for such a long time, not to mention that there are almost no survivors in the city. There aren't many left, and even if there are, they all look like refugees. Although these four awakened ones are dressed in rags and look very embarrassed, they are a bit too strong. Chapter 239 Yi Hanayu's Thoughts. Chapter 241 Yi Hanayu's Thoughts. Xia Bai's battleship was landing on the roof of a building in Shengjing City. The four unlucky ones had already been tied up and thrown into the battleship. Of course, the binding was of little significance to the awakened people. In order to restrain this group of people, Xia Bai put a collar on one of them and made them lie down on the ground. With Luo Yuda's previous experience, the dog collar that Xia Bai thought was useless turned out to be a powerful tool to restrict people. In fact, Xia Bai was a little confused. This thing produced by the system can even be turned over by people in minutes. Is it really for some kind of pet? At this moment, it was already noon, and those unlucky guys still hadn't woken up. Xia Bai was cooking rice with Yi Hanayu. Xia Bai's lunch today is canned beef, rice and blueberry juice. Most of these items come from the output of battleships, although battleships are no longer used by Xia Bai to produce basic materials to subsidize Anyang Mountain, but Xia Bai's daily food is still very high-end, and high-end things must of course come from the battleship. Eating is the most important thing in life. Before the end of the world, although Xia Bai didn't have much money, he still had to eat well. In his opinion, people had to do so many so-called serious things when they were alive and went to work and school every day. After making money, they had to eat, drink and live well. What's the point? Of course, Xia Bai never had much money and had never eaten anything high-end. Therefore, Xia Bai was very willing to give up these energy points today. Yi Hanayu was here, and Xia Bai even brought out a fish specially. Such a meal, before the end of the world, would be an ordinary meal for ordinary people. But right now, this is definitely a luxurious meal. At this time of year, even the survivors on Anyang Mountain would be red-eyed when they see such a meal. Yi Hanai was slightly speechless when he saw it and said, while others are still happily eating sweet potatoes and grinning from ear to ear, you, a bourgeois class, are already drinking blueberry juice and eating fish. She rubbed her chin and thought for a while, then said, no wonder those two idiots Chen Qianqing and Li Jinggyang want to go out with you to kill zombies every day. Genji is here. Xia Bai smiled and said, how about it? Are you interested in following me every day from now on? Yi Hanai glanced at Xia Bai, shook her head, and said firmly, no. The corners of Xia Bai's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Why? Yi Hanai said, I'm on your battleship, and I can't help you much. I can't just come here every day to eat, right? I'd better follow Captain Lu. I can learn something from her, and I'm an awakened person. It's necessary. I can always lend a hand sometimes when Yi Hanai is serious, and when she is not serious, she seems to be two different people. Hearing this, Xia Bai just smiled and said nothing more. The two of them ate in silence, talking about trivial and irrelevant things. Xia Bai talked about his various experiences in hunting zombies, while Yi Hanai talked mostly about trivial matters in the survivor base. For example, Tsukio Kyo likes Kyo Deming, which woman switches between several men and wants to play fairy dance in any young mountain. Yi Hanai has a carefree personality. Maybe something really happened at the Fuchs in survivor base yesterday, which made her feel very bad. But as time went by, and after talking nonsense like this with Xia Bai for a while, she became really happy. Yi Hanai has a characteristic. People may not be able to tell when she is sad, but when she is happy, it will definitely be written on her face. She is really pretty when she smiles. When she is happy. Xia Bai listened for a long time and couldn't help but said, how did I find out that you are also such a gossip? What am I gossiping about? I run out with Captain Lu every day. How can I have time to gossip? Chen Yingying told me this. Yi Hanai said, haha, even though Chen Yingying is usually submissive, this guy's an invisible eater. You people, every night when you go to bed, you tell these nonsense things like me telling stories. If nothing else, it's really interesting. It's the end of the world, and people have so many different ways to live their daily lives. Xia Bai couldn't help but twitch the corners of her mouth slightly, remembering the first day when she saw Chen Yingying. The girl was sitting in her RV crying. This is still really a bit of a contrast. Yi Hanai said, hey, let me tell you, if the end of the world hadn't come, maybe I would have become an anchor. Chen Yingying collected information for me to make a record. Every day, I would eat, drink and have fun during the day, and at night I would learn what Chen Yingying taught me. Say, if I keep showing off my laughter, I will make a lot of money. Haha. Xia Bai glanced at the fanciful Yi Hanai and couldn't help but added, then he was banned directly, and he was compensated hundreds of millions. It was so cool. Yi Hanai was choked to death by these words and rolled her eyes at Xia Bai in front of her. Xia Bai smiled and said, aren't you going to tell me what happened at the Fuchs in survivor base yesterday? Yi Hanai took a look. Xia Bai said that Yi Hanai seemed to have met an acquaintance in Fuchs in. She really met an acquaintance who couldn't be more familiar. Her parents and her younger brother. Yi Hanai never thought that she could see them at such a time and in such a place. She didn't even think that her parents could survive. She followed Xia Bai and encountered a lot of dangers along the way to where she is today. What surprised her even more was that her brother was also an awakened person. Because of this level relations, her family still has a high status in the Fuchs in survivor base. In the beginning, Yi Hanai was actually very happy. She was not the kind of person who cared about things. In the end of the world, her parents just left, and there was nothing. Didn't she, the daughter, take the initiative to look for them? But the situation changed later. Her parents didn't know that Yi Hanai was an awakened person. At first, they wanted to take Yi Hanai's helicopter and leave directly. After all, Fuchsin had been besieged by zombies, but then Captain Lu and the Fuchsin survivors, the person in charge of the base, had an unhappy conversation. This unhappiness was not as simple as Xia Bai said. Mr. Chen from Fuchsin wanted to keep Xia Bai's 5 helicopters, and in the end a conflict and confrontation almost broke out. At that time, they had already begun to retreat. Yi Hanai was still thinking about her parents, so she wanted to take them away together. But later she discovered that her parents actually wanted to follow her line and designed a different plan. Those who used weapons kept all 5 of Xia Bai's helicopters. Chapter 240 Go Take It Out on Me. Chapter 242 I Need You. Yi Hanai still remembers clearly that when she was in that room, she discovered her parents' plan. Her father held her hand and said, "Hanai, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If our family can, taking over those 5 helicopters is equivalent to holding the lifeline of the Fuchsin survivor base. Everyone will come to fawn over us. You are good looking. Follow Mr. Chen. By then, our family will be able to rise to the top, and nothing else. A small citizen can also be a king in the apocalypse. That way, your mother and I will no longer have to worry. You can live a good life by following Mr. Chen, which is better than being a follower by Captain Lu now." Yi Hanai's father said it with enthusiasm, but Yi Hanai only felt scared. She knew that if she really followed what her father said and left 5 helicopters behind, Captain Lu and the others would have no chance of survival. Moreover, this man also wanted to sell herself to that man, Mr. Chen, the person in charge of Fuchsin Point. Yi Hanai would never agree. Her irritable temper came over, and she refused on the spot. Her father still wanted to keep her, and even asked Yi Hanai's brother to take action. Yi Hanai was the awakener. Her brother was too young, and the awakeners he is not very powerful and cannot be Yi Hanai's opponent. Point at this moment, her mother saw the 2 people making moves and became a little anxious. She rushed up and gave Yi Hanai a slap in the face and shouted, "Go away, Yi." Hanai turned around and left. Then she turned around and slapped Mr. Chen from Fuchsin. The atmosphere between the 2 parties instantly dropped to freezing point, and they almost started fighting. But when she did this, besides being really annoyed, there was also another layer. Mean point, she directly made the atmosphere tense, making both parties wary of each other and preventing Fuchsin from using any other means to make Lu Yi confused. Point, Xia Bai is a very decent soldier, but she has a fatal flaw of a decent soldier. In her eyes, survivors are civilians, and civilians need military protection. Therefore, her wariness against survivors is quite low. In fact, it can be seen in Anyang Mountain that she was actually sent to watch over Xia Bai, but she always wanted to do something to help Anyang Mountain. In her opinion, Anyang Mountain is a survivor base and a civilian force. As a soldier, you have to do something. Point later, as the situation became tense, Xia Bai and the others simply withdrew. Point, but Mr. Chen from Fuchsin really wants to keep these 5 helicopters. As Father Yi said, now that the Fuchsin survivor base is trapped, whoever has these 5 helicopters will be equivalent to mastering them. The lifeline for the survivors to evacuate in Fuchsin. Although the transportation volume of the 5 helicopters is not large, it is impossible to guarantee the evacuation of the entire survivor base. However, there are 2 completely different concepts, but Fuchsin didn't dare to take action directly. Captain Lu's side was from the military. If Fuchsin took action, if Captain Lu's side couldn't be killed in one breath, as long as a little bit of information was sent out, then for the Fuchsin survivor base, it was a disaster. Therefore, in the end, they could only watch Yi Hanai and others leave. She did not tell anyone about Yi Hanai and her parents. There was no reason for this, and she had no habit of talking to others. She had been doing this since she was a child. I have encountered many people who have had their teeth knocked out. If I can, I will fight them back. If I can't, I will swallow them myself. What's the use of telling others? And ultimately, it's not a big deal. Point, however, when Xia Bai found her on the tarmac yesterday, at a certain moment, she really wanted to say it, but in the end she said nothing. Point, Xia Bai did not tell Xia Bai the true intentions of Fuchsin. Her thoughts were different from Yi Hanai. Although she had not been in contact with Xia Bai for a long time, she actually knew Xia Bai fairly well, and knew what kind of person Xia Bai was. This guy is a bandit. If Xia Bai knows about the dangerous measures in Fuchsin, he will drive a battleship to kill him. Point, but in Xia Bai's view, some people in Fuchsin are indeed too greedy. However, many survivors are innocent. If Xia Bai takes revenge, ordinary people will suffer. Even if there is any situation, Xia Bai will have to wait. Let's talk about it. When we start to rescue the survivors in Fuchsin Survivor Base Point, Xia Bai himself probably didn't expect that he would have such an image in Xia Bai's mind point at this moment. Yi Hanyu looked at the person in front of her, thinking about what Xia Bai said to her last night about no one can touch my people, and felt a little touched in her heart point. She pursed her lips and said, "Did I say last time that you are just like other peoples?" "Dad's, Xia Bai, Yi Hanyu said, "That guy Bailan is just like my mother." Yi Hanyu glanced at Xia Bai and said with a smile, "One of you is my father and the other is my mother. Next time you go to Fuchsin, just go with me. Go and vent my anger. Let them look. I also have people who care about me, and I also have people standing behind me, and I need you." Xia Bai was stunned for a moment, thinking that only Yi Hanyu could say such lines, but he smiled and said, "Bailan and I are your brother and sister's generation after we fight to the death. But if you want us to help you vent your anger or something, then you have to beat my legs first or something." Yi Hanyu still didn't say what happened, but to Xia Bai, what really happened was not important. What was important was that Yi Hanyu had decided to ask for their help. Xia Bai didn't care what happened. As he said before, no one could touch his people. No matter which side of the truth he was on, he was the one who defended his shortcomings. Nowadays, there are more and more people on any Yang mountain, but those who can truly be called Xia Bai's friends or even relatives are only the first ones hearing this. Yi Hanyu's face suddenly showed a very obvious look of anger and an expression of wanting to take action point. But at this moment, behind them, a scream suddenly came from the battleship. That's when the awakened one woke up. As for this scream, it should be that some unlucky guy woke up and tried to struggle, but was electrocuted by the collar. Xia Bai's face straightened slightly, and he immediately stood up and walked towards the battleship behind. Yi Hanyu also stood up, but she did not take steps immediately. Instead, she stood in her position and silently looked at Xia Bai's back over their point. She never talked about these things to others before, because it was meaningless for her to say it, because no one would help her, and her sisters would even point to her to take care of her point. But now there are also people who just stand by her side without any reason or reason. She turned her back to the sky, and the sun dropped down from between the slightly gathered clouds and fell on her body, making her body slightly brighter. The corners of her mouth raised slightly, and she silently said, "Thank you." Xia Bai is not very handsome and has a dull temperament, but he talks nicely and does things well. He is likable. Thanks to book friend Whisper for the $10,000 award. The 13th helmsman of this book was born. Thank you for your support. More will be added tomorrow. Chapter 241, The Grassroots. Chapter 243, Wallpaper. Xia Bai didn't hear the thank you. At this moment, he was coming to the side of those unlucky people. He had already noticed something unusual before catching this group of people. After catching them, he discovered that these 4 people were all awakened people. This Lanoop is absolutely luxurious in the apocalypse. The number of living people is small, and the number of survivors is even smaller. On any Yang mountain, including Yi Hanyu and Bailan, there are only 11. The awakened are a small probability event caused by a large population count under the influence of this alien virus. The number is not large in the first place. After all, the alien virus is not here to help human evolution. Among ordinary survivors, awakened ones are boss level beings, rare and powerful, and extremely powerful individuals who are immune to viruses. Therefore, among the vast majority of ordinary survivor bases, the awakened have a higher status, and because of this, Xia Bai was slightly surprised when 4 awakened people appeared here. He immediately realized that the appearance of these 4 guys must be unusual. The one who has the ability to pull out 4 awakened people to deal with him is definitely a powerful force. In fact, the first thing Xia Bai thought of was the 13 kings of Changbei Mountain. After all, it was a powerful survivor force dominated by awakened people. The 13th king is the unlucky guy who took the blame. Xia Bai also wanted to find out what these guys were. So as soon as they woke up, Xia Bai came over immediately. When Xia Bai came here, he found that only one person had woken up. That person was the unlucky Cunning. He didn't understand what was going on at all. When he woke up, he realized that he was tied up. He was overjoyed and thought that Xia Bai was too trusting and used a rope Those who come to tie up the awakened ones are either brainless or country bumpkins who have never even seen the awakened ones at that time. Junming had just woken up from the effects of the paralyzing drugs, and his head was not clear. When he thought of this, he immediately felt that this was what happened. He was ecstatic in his heart, and immediately prepared to break free from the rope, and then, the doctor screamed point. When Xia Bai came over, he saw Junming on the ground with a lifeless look on his face point. Because he was dealing with the awakened, Xia Bai deliberately increased the output power of the collar at this moment. Xia Bai came here, squatted down in front of Junming, smiled slightly, took out a gun and a can of beef from the corner, placed them in front of Junming, and said with a smile, "I don't know who you are, and I don't quite know what you are, but anyone who knows me knows that I'm the kind of person who will retaliate. Logically speaking, if you dare to jump on my battleship to deal with me, it will be easy for me to kill you. However, I noticed that the four of you are all awakened ones, right? Although Junming was paralyzed by the electricity, his head was somewhat clearer. After listening to Xia Bai's words, he immediately realized that Xia Bai was probably trying to recruit him. This is the most common thing for awakened people. Junming couldn't help but take a breath. In the first moment, a plan emerged in his mind. Pretend to agree first, and then take action. This was the third time in this short day that Junming felt that he had seized the opportunity. Xia Bai smiled and said, "I guess you can probably hear what I mean. My Anyang mountain is short of people, so now I'll give you two choices. First, he was shot to death by me. Second, tell me who you are, who sent you, what your purpose is, and your follow-up plans. From now on, follow me and live your life." Junming's eyes flashed, and he was about to agree, but before he could say anything, Xia Bai over there stood up and said, "Hanayu, bring us a half pot of fish." Yi. Hanayu, what kind of name is this? Why did it become Hanayu? Although Yi Hanayu seemed very unhappy, she still did as she was told, bringing over the remaining half of the pot of fish and placing it in front of Junming. Immediately afterwards, Xia Bai started to take out things: cigarettes, alcohol, all kinds of food and drinks in addition to conventional military supplies. His battleship contains many such things. This also indirectly reflects Xia Bai's two major pursuits in life: killing zombies and eating and drinking. At first, Junming was still unmoved. At that time, he even thought to himself, before the end of the world, what is the difference between this and throwing money at people? But later, as Xia Bai put more and more things in front of him, and the types became more and more diverse, his expression began to become more exciting. Xia Bai smiled and said, "Look, the situation here is probably like this. On Anyang Mountain, there is no shortage of food and drink. In terms of weapons, you have also seen my spaceship. I don't know why I asked you to come. The people who dealt with me promised you something, but I don't think you are a member of the military, brother. What you were promised was that you would have nothing to worry about at most. But let me tell you the truth, when you come to Anyang Mountain, you will have everything to eat and drink. Drinking is the most basic thing. You are an awakened person. It is sure to taste good and drink well. Hot water bathing every day is the basic treatment for awakened people. Moreover, it turns out that the resort on Anyang Mountain is a super resort. You can live in the building. One person and one bed are the basic conditions. If you think these are unreliable, I will give you 2 gold bars a day. In other directions, we are also fully armed. If you are interested, you can also operate drones." Xia Bai kept chattering here, but Junming over there had a dull look on his face. I don't know if it was because of the electric shock, but the awakened person could hardly close his mouth. He said, "Is everything you said true?" Xia Bai smiled and said, "I want to recruit you. If I use fake things to deceive you, will you be able to hide it when you get to Anyang Mountain? Does it make sense?" Junming took a breath, stared at the pile of things in front of him, and said. His thoughts quietly changed at this moment, because he suddenly realized that Xia Bai's basic treatment here was even better than what his employer promised him. The remuneration after the work is completed is better. Moreover, compared with Xia Bai, the Changbai Mountain Survivor Base, which is crowded with nearly 1 million people, is just like a refugee camp. If it were anyone else, They might still be thinking about it at this moment, but Guo Junming and the others were awakened people, so they had no hesitation at this moment. They would go with whoever was treated better. Guo Junming lay on the ground, using his hand that was numb from the electric shock. Mouth. He said vaguely, "Don't say anything anymore, brother. Big brother. Our brothers are just following you. You don't need to ask. When I calm down, I will tell you about the people who sent us to deal with you. Tell you everything." Junming's camp changed quickly, and so did his thoughts. What he was thinking at the moment was, he had followed Xia Bai, and Xia Bai's enemies were his enemies. In other words, his former employer was now his enemy. In order to stay with Xia Bai for a long time, the first thing they have to do is get rid of their former employer. Seeing this, Yi Hanai couldn't help but poke Xia Bai's waist and whispered, "Is this kind of wallflower reliable?" Xia Bai smiled and said nothing. Point, of course it is reliable. For people like Guo Junming, as long as the treatment provided by Xia Bai is good enough, he is the most loyal person. Looking at the current 3 eastern provinces, there is really no survivor base that can have such good treatment. Chapter 242 Information about Anyang Mountain. Chapter 244 Information about Anyang Mountain. Although Guo Junming showed his intention to surrender, he did not immediately tell everything he knew. Point, after all, even though what Xia Bai said was true, they hadn't seen the real thing, right? Therefore, although Guo Junming and his other 3 unlucky partners were all awake at this moment, they were all tied up. They just changed from being thrown to the ground to lying on the ground to sitting on the seats on the other side. I can finally see the scenery outside through the battleship. Point, of course, this is actually what Xia Bai meant. Point, although Xia Bai wanted to accept Guo Junming, the 4 awakened people who fell from the sky, the level of trust between them was indeed not high, and it was difficult to establish it, based on interests alone in such a short period of time. Therefore, it was him who he proposed that it would not be too late for Guo Junming to tell him about the situation when he returned to Anyang Mountain. Point, before the apocalypse, people struggled for money, houses, and cars to live a superior life. After the apocalypse, the same is true, but the environment has changed, and what people pursue in life has become simpler and more materialistic. Point, houses, cars, food, and a superior life. In the end of the world, when the basic issues of survival are solved, people's attention will turn in this direction again. Point, for people in the apocalypse, a pack of high-end cigarettes, or even a pack of Oreos, or a bowl of beef soup is equivalent to a combination of luxury goods and necessities before the apocalypse. It not only has value, but also demonstrates the excellence of life. Point, before the end of the world, you can buy someone with a large amount of money. After the end of the world, you can use other things with the same market value to buy others. Although Xia Bai has never been in an ordinary survivor base in this life, he has experience in the previous life, and is extremely familiar with the rules among survivors in this world. For many ordinary survivors, they do not have there is no need for a position. If you give me food and supplies, I will be willing to do things for you. As a special group of survivors in the apocalypse, the awakened have a very simple idea. Who can afford to hire them? There will be no corresponding huge risks, so they will work for whomever they are willing to work for. Awakened people are like the so-called elites. They have stronger abilities, but they also need higher commissions and benefits to allow them to work steadily. Once higher and better jobs appear, most of them will immediately choose to change jobs to find a life and job that is more beneficial to them. Point, from the perspective of personality and mind, Guo Junming is not comparable to the elites, but he is an awakened person and is an elite in the apocalypse. Point, although the appearance of Guo Junming and others was an accident for Xia Bai actually planned to continue hunting a wave of zombies in Shengjing City according to the original plan. Point, the sooner the battleship reaches level 5, the better it will undoubtedly be. Point, intelligent zombies in this life appeared earlier, and the timing of changes and attacks on humans was far earlier than Xia Bai imagined. Although the military had already launched a large-scale search and strangulation campaign for intelligent zombies, it still seems difficult for the military to really stop the growth and progress of these things. But unfortunately, today seemed to be the day when Xia Bai's plan fell through. Point, he simply took a bite of a meal that was by no means simple in the eyes of most survivors. As soon as he returned to the battleship and prepared to set off, he received a message from Anyang Mountain Point. There are two pieces of information, both of which are encrypted and sent personally by Hao Zuan Point. The first one is that Chen Guangyao, whom Xia Bai asked Tuan Qiulan to investigate, found out that he was indeed connected with a big shot in Changbei Mountain and seemed to be planning to attack Xia Bai in the near future. The previous Buncheng missile attack also seemed to be related to Chen Guangyao Point. The second one is another situation. In Anyang Mountain, there are signs of large-scale zombie activities in several directions. When Xia Bai saw these two messages, he immediately drove the battleship into the sky, changed direction in mid-air, accelerated directly and fiercely, and with a sharp sonic boom, penetrated the sky at high speed and flew towards the far end of the world. Go point. The battleship suddenly accelerated in mid-air, and Guo Junming and others behind him were startled. In their opinion, Xia Bai's battleship was just like the weird black tech aircraft in the movies, which were everywhere. Different from modern military equipment, it is extremely advanced in certain key positions. When he saw it outside, Guo Junming only thought that the battleship was dark, cold, sharp and powerful. However, as time passed and he sat in the battleship, he felt a sense of power that came from technology and weapons. This battleship is not only a hedgehog on the outside, but also full of dangers on the inside. Point. Only now did Guo Junming really know why the people above asked them to take the battleship back to Changbei Mountain after they succeeded. Point. Such a thing makes even Guo Junming feel a little excited and passionate. Point. However, Guo Junming suffered 3 losses in a row and calmed down. He just thought about this kind of thing. At the moment, they were both tied up, and they had a rope around their necks that could be moved casually. It's just a collar that generates electricity. Even if he really wants to do something, it's impossible. Moreover, when they first boarded the battleship, the 4 awakened ones were knocked down in an instant. Point. And, according to the information I saw before, that Xia Bai is also an awakened person. Right, I'm an awakened person. I have an X-generation black technology battleship like this, and I also have a survivor base. These are all survivors. Why is the gap so big? Guo Junming sighed slightly in his heart, raised his head, and saw the beautiful girl named Yi Hanyu looking at him. Point. In Guo Junming's opinion, Yi Hanyu is definitely a great beauty. He can see that Yi Hanyu has basically no makeup on her face and her hair is messy, but her skin is so fair and her facial features are also very delicate. She looks like a doll. It's especially beautiful when you open your eyes. This girl is only 17 or 18 years old, right? Guo Junming glanced at Yi Hanyu, and then at the position of Xia Bai in the cockpit in front. His eyes still involuntarily fell back to Yi Hanyu's face, looking straight at the girl in front of him. Point. What a beast, snapped Yi Hanyu gave Guo Junming a slap in the face and glared unhappily. What are you looking at? If you have time, think about it, and return to Anyang Mountain. What can you say? There will be another update later. Chapter 243. He didn't dare to blow up the building. Chapter 245. He didn't dare to blow up the building. The distance between Shengjing City and Anyang Mountain was not that far away. Xia Bai drove his warship at full speed and returned to Anyang Mountain in a short time. Point. The roar of battleships resounded above Anyang Mountain. Point. Xia Bai did not go to the current Anyang Mountain command center at all, but directly positioned himself at the building where Chen Guangyao was, hovering in the sky. Point. The building where Chen Guangyao is located is also one of the guest rooms in the construction area of Anyang Shanqian Resort. It is 11 stories high, and all the people on the 5th floor and above are occupied by Chen Guangyao. Point. Gathering everyone together is one of the common practices of the survivor forces. When Xia Bai arrived here in his battleship, he had already attracted the attention of countless people. They were all watching from far and near. Of course, Chen Guangyao, who was in the building, discovered what was going on here immediately. He was in the toilet at that time, picked up his pants, rushed out and came to the window. Point. It was just a little afternoon, and when the sun was shining, it was dark in front of his window. It was the shadow cast by the battleship. Point. Chen Guangyao stretched out his head, raised his head, and saw the huge figure of the cold and dark battleship in the sky. Point. Immediately afterwards, he heard Xia Bai's broadcast from the battleship. Mr. Chen Guangyao, there is an emergency now. Please take your people and evacuate from the current building immediately. I will give you 3 minutes. Please take your people with you immediately. Although Xia Bai didn't say what he wanted to do. Chen Guangaio's face couldn't help but turn blue and white when he heard these words and the information and tone revealed by Xia Bai. He had already realized something. Moreover, as far as Chen Guangaio knows, today seems to be the time when people sent from Changbei Mountain are preparing to take action. Now that Xia Bai appears here intact, does that mean, at this moment, Chen Guangaio heard the voice of a radio again. Hey, Chen Guangaio, I saw you. What are you leaning against the window and looking at? Hurry up and put your pants up and go downstairs. Chen Guangaio was frightened by these words and trembled slightly. He instinctively pulled up his pants and retreated, but he bumped into his own men who also rushed in from behind. His men were very panicked and said, "Brother Yao, what should we do? What should we do?" Chen Guangaio took a deep breath and said, "What should we do? Our affairs may have been exposed. We may not be able to sit on the Mountain King of Anyang Mountain, and we cannot go out now." When Chen Guangaio said this, he raised his head and took a look and found that his men were all approaching his house. Apparently they all wanted to make their own decisions, so he said, "We don't need to be afraid. Xia Bai's grandson's battleship, although powerful, what can he do to us if we don't go out? This building is the foundation of Anyang Mountain, and there are many survivors who have nothing to do with this matter. He can't blow this building down with one shot, right?" Although he said this, everyone in the room, including him, seemed a little timid. They have all seen how powerful Xia Bai's battleship is. Even if they get a tank, they may not have the ability to fight against Xia Bai. What's more, at this moment, they are completely made of flesh and blood. The armed forces on Anyang Mountain were under control again. Although Chen Guangaio also obtained a lot of weapons, compared with Xia Bai's warships, they were as useless as a worm shaking a tree. However, at this time, one of his men beside him suddenly shouted, "You are the one who took the lead in this matter. Why do you want us to suffer the same fate as you?" Along with this voice, a second person in the corner immediately shouted, "Yes, let's arrest Chen Guangaio and hand him over to Mr. Xia." Chen Guangaio's expression suddenly changed. Although there were nearly 1,000 people in his team of survivors, only close associates were involved in these things, and there were only 100 or so people in total, all living in this building. But Chen Guangaio reacted quickly. He pulled out a pistol from the waist of his trousers that had not yet been lifted up and fired twice, killing the two people who took the lead in speaking. The scene was suddenly suppressed. Chen Guangaio has also become the boss who wants to be on the spot, and he still has this bit of power at the moment. He said coldly, "You can arrest me and hand me over to Mr. Xia, but let me remind you that our Mr. Everyone knows what happened to the 13 kings. If Mr. Xia is offended, Mr. If you catch me, will you be able to survive?" When everyone heard this, they all looked at each other and then nodded. Chen Guangaio took a deep breath and said, "Everyone, listen to me. We are in Anyang Mountain, and in this building, we just need to hold on. Xia Bai will not blow up the building. He will rush in with people if he fights to death. By fighting with us, we don't have to worry about confronting the battleships. When the time comes, we just need to seize the opportunity and escape will not be a problem." Without waiting for Chen Guangaio's men in the room to react, Xia Bai's broadcast from the battleship was heard outside again, and what he said seemed to be catering to Chen Guangaio's words. 3 minutes are up. "Mr. Chen Guangaio, you don't want to come out, do you? Then I won't be merciful. At that time in Bincheng, you hit me with a missile, and now you want to kill me. Although you can also be called he is the mainstay of our survivor base, but this matter. Haha, 3 minutes have passed now. Mr. Chen, you don't need to come out. In the building below, there are people who have nothing to do with Chen Guangaio and his gang. Please evacuate immediately. I will give you 6 minutes to evacuate, and after 6 minutes, I will launch a devastating attack on the current building." 4. A long time after Xia Bai finished speaking, Chen Guangaio and his men fell into a deathly silence in Chen Guangaio's suite. Then, there was great chaos, and his younger brother screamed and ran out in a hurry. Chen Guangaio, on the other hand, looked dull. He took 2 steps back and roared at the few loyal people who had not run away. "Is he crazy? Is that guy Xia Bai crazy? He blew up the building in front of his house. Question mark? Was his head caught in the door? What a loss it is to blow up a building. He must be bluffing. He must be bluffing. He doesn't dare to blow up the building. He doesn't dare to blow up the building. Chen Guangaiao's face turned pale. He stepped backwards and finally fell to the ground behind him. His men looked at each other in confusion. More updates for the helmsman whisper. Thank you for your support and continue to ask for support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244, As Long as He is Happy. Chapter 246, As Long as He is Happy. Kwa Junming was a little frightened. He didn't expect that he had just arrived at Anyang Mountain and was still a prisoner, and what he saw was this scene. Listening to what Xia Bai said before, he realized that the person Xia Bai was dealing with now seemed to be related to him. The person in the building below who was about to be killed by Xia Bai seemed to be the person who delivered the message to him today, providing him with the exact time Xia Bai left Anyang Mountain. Thinking of this, Kwa Junming couldn't help but feel a little scared. Xia Bai's way of dealing with the mole really shocked Kwa Junming. When dealing with moles, isn't it usually done internally, so that people disappear from the world? What's the situation like driving a battleship directly onto the roof of someone's building to blow it up? Isn't this too fierce? Kwa Junming looked at this scene and thought that Xia Bai's attitude towards him when he was in Shengjing just now was not very good compared to this at this moment. Xia Bai's willful and reckless move has already attracted the attention and attention of countless people. The population of Anyang Mountain is not large. With Xia Bai's efforts to suppress it and the pre-apocalyptic social system that Xia Bai hopes to restore, Anyang Mountain has always been quite peaceful. Although there is no shortage of dark sides, there is no use such exaggeration. Therefore, Xia Bai's incident today is definitely the biggest event in Anyang Mountain. Hao Zuan came immediately with the Anyang Mountain guards. Ziyuchen and Kyo Deming, two old and cunning guys, naturally couldn't just sit there. They immediately came to reinforce and immediately reported to Xia Bai through the channel. Express his determination to enter the building and capture Chen Guangaiao alive at any time. Hao Zuan really wanted to help. He also knew about the missile incident in Bincheng before. Xia Bai was very angry about this matter. Hao Zuan was actually very angry too. No matter what others thought, in Hao Zuan's eyes, these people, the people who have come all the way from Bincheng to today, have already shared weal and woe and are one body. Especially for Xia Bai, although he is familiar with it now. Hao Zuan is usually a little disrespectful towards Xia Bai, but he knows that without Xia Bai, he would never survive today, let alone become the captain of the Anyang Mountain Guard. Therefore, Xia Bai will always be the boss in Hao Zuan's heart. Of course, he will never agree to anyone who dares to touch his boss at this moment. He was standing behind the battleship, looking up at the sky. And Bailan was standing next to him. She was still very calm. Because in her opinion, it was impossible for Xia Bai to suffer a loss on such an occasion. Since Xia Bai can't suffer any loss, what does she have to worry about? However, if Xia Bai really blows up the building today, then Xia Bai's reputation in Anyang Mountain will be even louder compared with Bailan's calmness. Huang Qiulan was a little anxious. She didn't take action against Chen Guangaiao first because of Xia Bai's instructions before, saying that she would personally deal with such a person, but she never expected that Xia Bai would actually. This is the approach point. After Xia Bai fired the shot, he must have vented his anger, and Huang Qiulan also believed that after today's incident Anyang Mountain will definitely be in chaos for a long time in the future. Everyone must be honest, and few people dare to give birth. Other thoughts came. If this building explodes, it will be a loss to Anyang Mountain. It's easy to blow up a building, but it would take an incredible amount of manpower and material resources to build another one. Therefore, Huang Qiulan has been trying to get in touch with Xia Bai since before, but unfortunately, Xia Bai has already closed the one-way channel. At most, she can only receive messages from Hao Zuan and others. The others cannot be transmitted at all. Huang Qiulan also knew that Bailan and Xia Bai had a completely encrypted internal channel. Now anxious, she quickly found Balan on the other side and said, Balan, you have to stop Xia Bai. This building, it can't be blown up. It can't be blown up. At this moment, Huang Qiulan was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. Balan was very calm. She glanced in the direction of the building not far away, where survivors were pouring out one by one, and said with a smile, look, haven't all the irrelevant people already evacuated? Huang Qiulan said, what I said is that you can't blow up the building. There will be one less building to blow up. Please advise Xia Bai to calm down. Shouldn't we arrest them alive and get other information? Balan smiled and said nothing. She believed that Xia Bai should have already taken care of such a simple matter and she didn't need to worry about it. Therefore, Balan only smiled and said, well, as long as he is happy, Huang Qiulan. At this moment, 6 minutes had passed in the sky, and Xia Bai waited a little longer, because he noticed that not all the survivors below had evacuated. Blowing up a building is nothing, but if some innocent survivors are accidentally injured, then what he did today will actually alienate him. If Xia Bai failed to catch Guo Junming and his group today, Xia Bai might actually take some gentle measures to control Chen Guangyao and find out who was behind him. But right now, there's no need for that. Chen Guangyao seemed to be very convinced that Chen Han would not be so crazy as to blow up a building in front of his house. He would not come out or surrender, and was ready to resist. The survivors below began to evacuate the area under the control of Hao Zhuang and others. However, most of the people who evacuated from the building were controlled. After all, there were also Chen Guangyao's people here. And this delayed Xia Bai for a certain amount of time. But Xia Bai didn't care. His battleship was here and no one could escape. Of course, for Chen Guangyao, every moment now is a torment. He felt that it was impossible for Xia Bai to fire, but he also felt that Xia Bai might fire at any time. He was like an ant on a hot pot, anxious and frightened. Xia Bai didn't let him wait too long. After all, it's always rude to make people wait. Xia Bai directly turned the muzzle of his battleship and fired 4 shots at the building, paying special attention to the upper and lower positions of the room. Where Chen Guangyao was, the explosions and loud noises were earth-shattering. 4 rounds came down. Half of the 11-story building was destroyed, and smoke and dust billowed up. Xia Bai exhaled slightly, raised the battleship, and handed over the task of cleaning the battlefield to Hao Zhuang and the others. He still had several things to resolve. 2 pieces of news came back from Anyang Mountain before, one of which was about Chen Guangyao, and the other was related to zombies. Chapter 245 Corpse Tide. Chapter 247 Tide of Corpses. Xia Bai's 4 cannons caused a huge sensation on Anyang Mountain. Huang Qiulan immediately launched her public relations team to explain the cause of this incident. There is no network in Anyang Mountain, and the communication is not very good, but things spread too fast. When he came to the Anyang command center from the scene, it was already known to everyone here. Xia Bai jumped off the battleship and handed Guo Junming's 4 unlucky men to the members of the Anyang Mountain Guard here. The soldiers of the Anyang Mountain Guard looked at Xia Bai a little strangely, but when the waist is straight. Xia Bai just nodded slightly to these soldiers and asked Ji Hanayu to listen to what Guo Junming had to say. However, he went straight to the tactical command center and found Li Jinggyang here. Although Li Jinggyang has not arrived at the scene, he now has the right to use 3 drones, and has already used 1 drone to have a panoramic view of the scene. As soon as Xia Bai came over, Li Jinggyang said, Brother Xia, work hard. If this shot goes down, the entire Anyang Mountain will be shaken. Let's see who dares to make any small moves in the future. Xia Bai smiled and said, I just hope it doesn't have too big a negative effect. The current situation is no better than before. The more stable Anyang Mountain is, the better. If I want to kill Chen Guangyao, I have to let everyone see it, and let those who have other thoughts think clearly. There will be a price to pay for whatever you do. Li Jinggyang said, I think if you had given an impromptu speech or something just now, and said a few words, the effect might be better. Xia Bai really felt that he should say something at that time, but he may have realized that he was a bit willful for being such a foregun, and he didn't have the nerve to pretend to be 13 on the spot. However, Xia Bai did not continue on this topic. but said, I received news before that a large number of zombies are moving towards Anyang Mountain. What is the situation? Hearing this, Li Jingyang's expression straightened slightly. He called up several image data recorded by the drone. While showing it to Xia Bai, he explained, this is what we uploaded from several directions in Anyang Mountain. In the picture, except for the military coastline defense line in the southwest, large groups of zombies appeared in several other locations. The number of each batch is tens of thousands, and they are gathered from the surrounding areas. The total number may be close to 100,000. Of course, their current location is still quite far away from Anyang Mountain, and there is nothing hidden. Xia Bai looked at the scene in the picture. Since the establishment of Anyang Mountain, he had driven a battleship and wandered around this area. He was quite familiar with the surrounding area. Therefore, just from the picture alone, he could see coming out. Although the number of these zombies is huge, they are still quite far away from Anyang Mountain Point. There are not so many zombies around Anyang Mountain Point, Li Jingyang said. This should be the work of intelligent zombies. Although there were losses in several directions before, the number was not so large. This group of zombies did not just appear recently. They had been gathering for a while, but it was not on such a large scale at that time, and there was no tendency to move towards Anyang Mountain. Xia Bai nodded. He didn't know this situation clearly. Of course, he didn't need to know. Now that Anyang Mountain has grown into a large scale, only big situations will be reported to Xia Bai Point. Moreover, Xia Bai is also self-aware. Although he has recently been learning various knowledge from Alpha and Battleship's database, he is not yet a qualified commander, let alone a military strategist. Under certain circumstances, the decisions you make may not be better than those made by others. Everyone has things they are good at and things they are not good at, things they can do well, and things they cannot do well. Xia Bai no longer thinks that he has a battleship. He is an all-around player. When Anyang Mountain was first established, he might have made decisions for the survivors on Anyang Mountain out of necessity. However, as the management system, military system, etc. of Anyang Mountain gradually took shape, Xia Bai also learned to delegate power to more powerful people. A capable person can do something that he cannot do well on his own. At this moment, there are many people in the Anyang Mountain Command Center. Li Jingyang is reporting the situation to Xia Bai here. On the other side, people with computer, information, or leadership skills are busy. Xia Bai said, smart zombies, I'm afraid they want to attack Anyang Mountain. Li Jingyang nodded and said, we also have this guess. The information we have obtained from our observations in the past 2 days is that the scale of this zombie is still expanding. Although the number of 100,000 zombies is huge, they are attacking us in this kind of ring. When we gather them together, the range is actually not very large, and with the current firepower of our Anyang Mountain, even if Brother Xia drives out with our battleship, it is impossible to intercept these zombies when they arrive at the foot of Anyang Mountain. Xia Bai also nodded. The purpose of the intelligent zombies is simple. They cannot destroy Xia Bai's battleship, but they may threaten the Anyang Mountain survivor base just around the corner, relying entirely on the advantage of the corpse sea. Xia Bai's warships could come and go freely with the corpse tied directly to the foot of Anyang Mountain, but Anyang Mountain could not point. Once these zombies arrive at Anyang Mountain, the threat of zombies to Anyang Mountain will be intensified. And more zombies will be attracted continuously from Shengjing City, and the possibility of taking down Anyang Mountain and even Xia Bai's battleship will be greater. This is one of the most common tactics used by intelligent zombies. Zombies are everywhere in the 3 eastern provinces. As long as they open up a situation, they can continuously gather zombies from all places. The survivor base fights against zombies. In the end, they can only fight more and more, completely bringing down a large survivor base alive. Moreover, ordinary zombies are only interested in living people and do not know fear, pain, fear, or retreat. Once they gather together and smell the charming breath of living people in the survivor base, they will never be defeated unless they are killed. Back away. In this case, the military has the advantage. They can clear out a large area of zombies in a short period of time, thereby dismantling the human wave tactics of intelligent zombies. But this tactic also represents a huge threat to Anyang Mountain at the moment. Li Jingyang glanced at Xia Bai and said, this is the current situation. We have started to build the third phase of the wall. We will increase the height of the existing wall on any mountain, based on the original, to withstand the impact of these zombies. Chapter 246 Antecedents. Chapter 248 Antecedents. Facing the fierce tide of corpses, Anyang Mountain was actually well prepared. This wave of zombies did not appear suddenly. A long time ago, Anyang Mountain had discovered the gathering of zombies in this direction, and had been monitoring it, and had established numerous response plans early on. However, the zombies did not move towards Anyang Mountain, and did not become an imminent threat, so Xia Bai was not informed. It was not until today that these zombies began to move in a targeted manner that Anyang Shan notified Xia Bai of the situation. Anyang Shan also confirmed that the movement of these zombies today should be guided by intelligent zombies. But the intelligent zombie was hidden in the zombie tide. Anyang Shan could not determine the location of the intelligent zombie by just using drones to detect the zombie tide, nor could it kill it in advance. Of course, there cannot be only one or two intelligent zombies in this entire zombie tide. Even if they are picked out and killed, it is impossible to solve the current problem. Xia Bai was very pleased, of course, because he could be a serious shopkeeper, although he came to see the situation now. In fact, he just came to see the situation. Li Jingyang and the others had already made preliminary plans and offensive measures. At least judging from the current situation, Xia Bai had nothing to interfere with. Xia Bai was very happy. Anyang Mountain is growing at a rapid rate. Although the current population of Anyang Mountain is still not large, the functions and manpower in all aspects have begun to take shape. This is also related to Xia Bai's policy. He did not adopt the usual survivor base style and establish a survivor base similar to the feudal landlord model. Instead, he tried his best to make every survivor in Anyang Mountain everyone plays their role, so that everyone enjoys equal and fair treatment, and those who are capable work more, and those who are capable receive more. What Xia Bai established is more inclined to the social style before the end of the world. Therefore, Anyang Mountain is relatively more stable than other survivor bases. Of course, the world is changing, and there are also undercurrents in Anyang Mountain. There are definitely many people like Guangyao who have other thoughts. However, with Xia Bai's battleship present, it is difficult for these undercurrents inside Anyang Mountain to truly pose any major threats or hidden dangers. This is not a matter of whether others think about it or not. What happened to Guangyao today will completely stop most people who have other ideas. This is caused by absolute force. Xia Bai's battleship is pressing here, and no one if he could fight against Xia Bai's battleship. He could only suppress his thoughts. It is impossible to make the entire Anyang Mountain completely monolithic. Human beings are such strange and wonderful creatures. One or two people are fine, but as long as the number of people increases, there will always be people with other ideas that run counter to the entire team. Xia Bai didn't stay with Li Jingyang for too long, because Anyang Mountain had already summarized the situation and made a response plan. Xia Bai didn't have any comments to make. In fact, he didn't even have to deal with the influx of corpses. The Anyang Mountain guards will naturally intercept first, and the construction of the third phase of the fence is also being stepped up. It can be said that, unless the zombie wave reaches the foot of Anyang Mountain, and cannot be stopped by the wall and Anyang Mountain guards, it may be time for Xia Bai to take action. And Xia Bai left Li Jingyang, and went straight to Yihanyu. Guo and the others were handed over to Yihanyu by Xia Bai. And Xia Bai asked Yihanyu to first interrogate these unlucky awakened people from Ice City. However, Guo had already intended to surrender, and the scene where Xia Bai had just dealt with Guangyao on Anyang Mountain was seen by Guo. In his opinion, it had the intention of killing the chicken to scare the monkey. This is Anyang Mountain. As the ruler of Anyang Mountain, Xia Bai killed the traitors on his own mountain and demolished a building. What else can't he do? Through this incident, Guo realized that, although Xia Bai had told him all kinds of benefits and was considered pleasant, but if he didn't act proactively and cooperatively, Xia Bai might also treat him as such. Got rid of it. In other places and other ordinary survivor bases, awakened people are of course an important resource among survivors. They will not be small figures in any survivor base, but this is obviously not the case in Anyang Mountain. Although Guo has not really joined Anyang Mountain to understand the situation in Anyang Mountain. He has roughly guessed that in Anyang Mountain, awakened people should be more like some kind of profession, just like top doctors and experts. Guo Junming didn't know whether this was a good thing or a bad thing, but he had always believed that, as long as the benefits Xia Bai promised to them were true and there was such a battleship in Anyang Mountain as a peak force, it would always be better than Xiangbei Mountain is better. And although the military in Xiangbei Mountain is powerful, it is far away from the real Shanghai Emperor compared to Anyang Mountain. Even if he rebels, he will not be held accountable if he wants to point therefore, without Jihan Ayu's careful questioning. Guo Junming himself told everything he knew like beans poured out of a bamboo tube. Guo Junming and the others were originally a force of awakened killers in Anyang Mountain. In fact, both the military and the scientific research center have provided good treatment to the awakened people, but Guo Junming is one of those ambitious people who does not want to be controlled by the military or oppressed by bureaucracy, so he gathered himself a few awakened people, started doing private work for people in the Xiangbei Mountain area, such as killing people and selling goods. However, as the population of Xiangbei Mountain increased, people were everywhere on the mountain and down the mountain. Although Guo Junming and the others were doing more and more work, there are more and more people, but the living environment is getting worse and worse, and there are fewer and fewer resources circulating among ordinary survivors working more, earning less, but the quality of life has actually declined. This is a true portrayal of Guo Junming and the others at the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base. They are awakened people who engage in murder and smuggling all day long, and the result is that their lives are slightly better than those of ordinary survivors who can hardly afford to live. This is certainly not the result that Guo Junming wants to see. They are the awakened ones. How could they just disappear like this? At this time, Zhu Liangzheng came to them and provided them with an opportunity to change everything. That is, go to the vicinity of Shengjing City in Liao Province to kill Xia Bai and bring back Xia Bai's warship. Chapter 247 Consequences. Chapter 249 Consequences. The person who hired Guo Junming was Zhu Liangzheng. The current person in charge of the Zhu group in Anyang Mountain seems to have led the Zhu group to the military forces of Yang Wenshan, but this does not seem to be the case in reality. Zhu Liangzheng offered Guo Junming a condition that satisfied Guo Junming. Once Guo Junming is able to accomplish this and take Xia Bai's warship back to the Xiangbei Mountain survivors, then Guo Junming and the others will have the conditions to live in the military family camp at the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base with a stable supply of 3 meals a day. Meal rations will never fall below a certain standard, and water and electricity are supplied regularly. Under such conditions, for Guo Junming and others, they could almost eat and die in Xiangbei Mountain. Of course, the prerequisite for such a mix of eating and waiting to die is that Xiangbei Mountain will not be invaded by zombies. The military family area in Xiangbei Mountain is a real building area. It was built after the apocalypse. Although the rooms are not big, only about 10 square meters or even smaller, they can truly have one room per person, and they don't have to live with those smelly buildings. They are mixed with ordinary survivors who have no taste, let alone a stable supply of 3 meals a day and regular water and electricity. Now the population of Xiangbei Mountain has expanded dramatically. Although the number of people is only close to 1 million, Xiangbei Mountain is only so big. The mountains and hills are almost crowded with people. The official food rations are getting less and less. At most, they can guarantee that you will not die. Really want to. If you want to eat, you have to rely on yourself. As for water and electricity, you can't even think about it. This kind of treatment can definitely be called good. Of course, compared with Xiangbei Mountain, Anyang Mountain now is simply paradise. There are sweet potatoes in the morning, rice at noon, and different things in the evening. Although water is not available to everyone, there are public bathrooms, and electricity is supplied all day long. Because the place is not big, there are not many places to use electricity. Anyang Shangang, which is backed by Shengjing City, can find fuel from Shengjing City and use the original power generation system on Anyang Mountain to maintain the supply of electricity. What's more, Xia Bai also has super solar cell modules produced by battleships. Although Anyang Mountain does not have everything, it basically has everything. That should be their point. Because of this, Guo Junming was completely surprised when he heard what Xia Bai said before, and then he discovered that Zhu Liangzheng had promised him generous treatment without directly surrendering to Xia Bai. No. So he decisively switched camps, but before Guo Junming did decide to take the risk to hunt Xia Bai because of such a promise. Xia Bai knew most of what happened later. However, Xia Bai confirmed from Guo Junming that the reason why Guo Junming was able to the accurate sniper shot to Xia Bai's location was indeed the information sent by Chen Guangaiao's people from Anyang Mountain Point at this moment. If Chen Guangaiao were here, he might realize that his mission and Guo Junming's mission were repeated, and part of them was to hand over Xia Bai's battleship point. This is of course because Changbei Mountain does not trust Chen Guangaiao point. However, Chen Guangaiao was already dead at this time point. However, Xia Bai was slightly surprised that the person who hired Guo Junming was Zhu Liangzheng point. Zhu Liangzheng cannot be the real boss behind the scenes. Although the Zhu group is prosperous in Changbei Mountain, it is still a civilian organization. For example, he cannot dispatch the 5 missiles in Bancheng point. Anyone who can mobilize 5 missiles to bomb Xia Bai must belong to the military system point. Of course, it was impossible for Yang Wenchen to deal with him, and there was no reason to deal with him, especially when Xia Bai went to bring back target number 1 in Bancheng. It was Li Jianbei's instruction. Unless they were crazy, they would not be able to do that. It's time to blow yourself up. Guo Junming didn't know much about the person behind Zhu Liangzheng. He was very observant of the rules. As a killer, he only took money to work. He never asked about anything else or got to the bottom of it point. However, Guo Junming didn't know that this didn't mean that the clues were cut off point. Although Chen Guangaiao is dead, most of his men are still alive point. Most of the survivor teams in the apocalypse are temporarily formed. The larger the scale and the more powerful they seem, the more loose they are. In fact, they are often in a state of dispersion. Once the leader dies, everyone else will basically die. Mutiny on the spot point. That kind of brave and loyal person does not exist, but in this apocalyptic environment, it is still very rare point. When Xia Bai was about to shell the building, he overwhelmed the psychological defenses of most of the people who followed Chen Guangaiao. He escaped early with the ordinary survivors, and was immediately escorted by Hao Zhuang and Deni Yangshan. The team members came under control point. Xia Bai made a big fuss about this matter, and Hao Zhuang, Huang Qiulan and others handled it very harshly point. As Anyang Mountain grew bigger and bigger, Huang Qiulan's ability actually showed some shortcomings, but she was very smart and established a team of her own early. Although Xia Bai didn't care much and had never seen it, Huang Qiulan there is indeed a team to support and maintain it now point. They attach great importance to this Chen Guangaiao incident and must use sharp means to thoroughly investigate and suppress it to avoid this happening next time point. Therefore, it didn't take long for Xia Bai to get more precise information from their point. Although Chen Guangaiao is dead, the upstream and downstream lines connected to Changbei Mountain are not dead. They still want to survive and do not want to follow in Chen Guangaiao's footsteps, so there is almost nothing to hide point. It is Nkis Heng of Changbei Mountain point. He wanted to capture Anyang Mountain, but of course, compared to Anyang County, what he seemed to want more was the battleship in Xia Bai's hands. Nkis Heng had already contacted Chen Guangaiao as early as when he was in Bancheng. At that time, Zhu Liangzheng probably had not directed Chen Guangaiao, so it was Nkis Heng who contacted Chen Guangaiao directly point. And Zhu Liangzheng and the Zhu group are unlikely to convince Chen Guangaiao that they have the ability to help him capture and take over the entire Anyang Mountain. Zhu Liangzheng and Nkis Heng, if you count the last letters of their names, I'm afraid these two are not from the same family. Xia Bai exhaled. If you dare to deal with me, I'm afraid these two guys don't want to mix together. Yi Hanai, who was standing next to him at this moment, she glanced at Xia Bai and said, should we fight back? Xia Bai shook his head and said, it's not the time yet. If we attack the door now, it's very likely that people will turn around. That's Changbei Mountain. No matter how strong my battleship is, with its current level, it can't stop the heavy power of Changbei Mountain. A volley of firepower, one shot, and we are all going to be finished. But I have asked Huang Qiulan to block the news here. Changbai Mountain is as high as the Emperor and far away. The later they know about this, the better it will be for us. Chapter 248 Confidence. Chapter 251 Confidence. This is a trap. Xia Bai looked at Zhu Liangzheng and the picture in front of him. The current person in charge of the Zhu group seemed very sincere, as if there was not even the slightest bit of untruth in what he said. Xia Bai also believed that what this person said about the Mutual Rescue Association and the situation in Daxingling must be true. Because there is no need to hide it. Although Xia Bai has no informants at the Changbai Mountain survivor base, he can clearly figure out the causes and consequences of such a major matter with just one investigation point, and therefore, the trap lies in settling in Changbai Mountain. Changbai Mountain is now the largest gathering place of survivors in the entire 3 northeastern provinces. Although its population is only close to 1 million, this number is already terrifying compared to the scattered survivors scattered in various regions of the 3 northeastern provinces, and there are large military units, plutocrats and forces in various fields and industries. Now that the world has entered the end of the world, it still belongs to China, but in fact it is no different from a warlord. Whoever controls the Changbai Mountain survivor base is equivalent to the king of the entire region. If it is true what Zhu Liangzheng said, Xia Bai settled in Anyang Mountain at this moment, and became the biggest booster of Yang Wenshan's faction. If Yang Wenshan's faction completely secures the heel of Changbai Mountain in the future, then Xia Bai will also be the biggest supporter of Yang Wenshan's faction. It may not have the supreme power like the military in Changbai Mountain in the northeast region, but it will also be an unstoppable and powerful force among the survivors. Although the population in Changbai Mountain is expanding, the supplies are far away in Anyang Mountain. Not to mention anything else, the armaments alone are enough to tempt anyone. By settling in the Changbai Mountain survivor base, as long as you can open up the situation, you can get countless benefits from it. What Zhu Liangzheng caught was Xia Bai's possible mentality. When he established a call with Xia Bai, although he was shocked that Xia Bai was not killed, it was nothing. Xia Bai's deeds were also done by Zhu Liangzheng. I heard that when Guo Junming and the others were sent here, Zhu Liangzheng didn't have high hopes. Anyway, the people hired by that thing would die if they died. It would be best if they could kill Xia Bai. The result of course, what Zhu Liangzheng probably never expected was that Guo Junming was not dead at all, but instead surrendered to Xia Bai's people at the speed of light. In fact, this is not to blame for Zhu Liangzheng's misstep. He himself did not expect that the situation would develop like that. According to him, Guo Junming and others are also awakened people. Using their own methods, if they cannot even board the spaceship, they will be trapped. As a result of the immediate bombardment, if he could board the spacecraft, once they started to fight, it would be impossible for Xia Bai to easily control several awakened ones. They would either die or be injured. A real fight would make him red-eyed. It is impossible for Junming and others to survive as survivors. However, a battleship is a battleship. Although Xia Bai's battleship has many shortcomings, it has defense systems inside and outside. Of course, the internal countermeasures are not that strong. If an extreme mutant comes in, it may cause it a big trouble, but with these few awakened beings, it's very easy to knock them down without a single blow. This is also the inertial thinking of most people who would install an automatic weapon system in an aircraft. Especially Xia Bai's battleship already looked so crowded. Moreover, Xia Bai is well known for his determination to punish all evil deeds. If he dares to attack him, isn't it normal for him to kill them all? Therefore, the moment he saw that Xia Bai was still alive, Zhu Liangzheng took it for granted that Guo Junming and others should be dead. However, in the end, this was not that important. He was now drawing a big picture for Xia Bai. Zhu Liangzheng believed that Xia Bai would definitely get 2 pieces of information from what he just said. First, the forces of Yang Wenshan's faction were hit. Second, the 13 Kings, the boss of the survivor forces in Changbai Mountain, was attacked by the Mutual Rescue Association overnight and suffered heavy losses. These 2 pieces of information can only point to the same judgment. The survivors' power in the Changbai Mountain survivor base is now in turmoil. If you enter Changbai Mountain at this time, you may have the opportunity to fish with the current and help Yang Wenshan at the same time. If Yang Wenshun, if a group of forces can rise up and regain control of Changbai Mountain and the military during this process, then they will surely become the most unstoppable newcomer among the many forces in Changbai Mountain. Point in Zhu Liangzheng's view, it was impossible for Xia Bai not to enter Changbai Mountain to cause trouble. There was no chance before, but now, this opportunity has been placed in front of Xia Bai. And as long as Xia Bai dares to enter the boundary of Changbai Mountain, and Kisheng behind Zhu Liangzheng will take action directly. No matter how powerful Xia Bai's battleship is, or how many unknown methods he has at his disposal, it is impossible for him to attack Changbai Mountain, which is the military base. What kind of chaos is happening in the survivor base? After Zhu Liangzheng finished speaking, he looked at Xia Bai in front of him and fell into silence. He seemed very confident and seemed to think that Xia Bai would definitely take the bait. Even if Xia Bai had already seen through his thoughts, it didn't matter. This was the best opportunity for the Anyang Mountain survivor base to intervene in Changbai Mountain. Xia Bai had only one choice, which was to forcefully heading into Changbai Mountain. Xia Bai really saw through Zhu Liangzheng's thoughts. Zhu Liangzheng is obviously a typical conspirator in the apocalypse. This kind of person does not know how to deal with zombies, but he is very good at targeting fellow humans. When others are working hard to resist zombies, they are struggling to survive. When building a better life in the apocalypse, this kind of people will wander among people. They have no strength at all and can only deal with their own kind. However, they can often sit in high positions and enjoy others fighting zombies for a living. Many supplies and peace came down. Such people are by no means a minority in the last days. Does Xia Bai have any thoughts about Changbai Mountain? Of course there is, but Zhu Liangzheng was wrong. Xia Bai didn't want to control Changbai Mountain, nor did he care about the supplies at the Changbai Mountain survivor base, nor did he care about the military's armaments and weapons. Moreover, Xia Bai knew better that Changbai Mountain was likely to be destroyed by internal fighting. It was Xia Bai's idea to save the Changbai Mountain survivor base and the military and survivors there. As for the supplies on Changbai Mountain and the king of Changbai Mountain, Xia Bai really doesn't like them. Xia Bai is sitting on a battleship and will surely travel across the starry sky in the future. The biggest trouble is the alien creatures that may come to the earth at any time. These are the kings of things and supplies that you are fighting for. For Xia Bai, everything is a matter of course. Not even remotely attractive. But Xia Bai also saw a message from Zhu Liangzheng's trap. Zhu Liangzheng was very sure that Xia Bai would be controlled as long as he dared to go to Changbai Mountain. This also meant that Yang Wenshun's faction was severely suppressed. Otherwise, with Yang Wenshun's faction around, and Kisheng would not be able to do anything. There may be such a battleship that has the confidence to deal with it. Chapter 249 Without missiles, there is no need to discuss anything. Chapter 252 Without missiles, there is no need to discuss anything. Xia Bai looked a little thoughtful. Zhu Liangzheng was right in his words, revealing quite a lot of information. Zhu Liangzheng has moved to Kisheng's faction, and Kisheng is obviously making a big move. Of course, at this moment, this big move may be coming to an end. The careerist who Xia Bai had never met may have been planning all this for a long time, and finally seized the opportunity yesterday. Overnight, he acted in many ways at the same time, completely turning the political and military situation in Changbai Mountain in his favor. This side point, and among these layers of planning and links, Anyang Mountain should be just an insignificant link. It can be seen from the group of people who have always dealt with Xia Bai that Chen Guangaiyao and Guo Junming are just trash. The Zhu group represented by Zhu Liangzheng is just a survivor force in the Changbai Mountain survivor base. And he is using survivors dealt with Xia Bai in this way, and he himself might not even care much about the situation here. He wants to be the king of the 3 eastern provinces of the New World in the apocalypse, and wants to control the military and survivors. The focus is of course on Changbai Mountain. The current Anyang Mountain is just a small place to Changbai Mountain. Maybe Xia Bai and Kisheng was interested in the battleship, but that was just an interest. In the adult world, when they are interested in something new and interesting, they may pay for it, or use some method to make it their own, but they will never pay for something that does not affect their life. Too much energy and time are wasted on novelties that are irrelevant to the overall situation. Point of course, if placed in an ordinary survivor base, Chenguangaiao and Guachunming would be enough to mess up a survivor base of the size of Anyang Mountain, but the real situation in Anyang Mountain is obviously far beyond Nkisheng and Zhu good imagination. Point the existence of Xia Bai's battleship cannot be shaken by mere awakeners like Guachunming. And the situation inside Anyang Mountain is also developing towards the pre-apocalyptic social structure. Monitors have covered the main roads and are controlled by satellites. Commissioners from the communication tower are responsible for security monitoring of Anyang Mountain, and the stable living conditions and food supply here make it impossible to be as chaotic as other messy survivor bases. Xia Bai holds the battleship in hand. Not only can he produce supplies and necessities, but he can also use the advantage of the battleship to continuously seize supplies from Shengjing City. Coupled with the existing infrastructure on Anyang Mountain, Xia Bai has always been able to resisting the party unity and dissent within Anyang Mountain and the centralization of materials by individual figures, which directly makes the situation in Anyang Mountain unprecedentedly stable. Point in the apocalypse, not everyone is ambitious. The vast majority of survivors who fight bravely and fiercely only want some supplies. Once the supplies are provided, the survivors will be able to settle down. Which survivor base makes them feel comfortable? If it is safe, they will spontaneously defend this place. From the end of the world to the current situation, everyone has been hunted by zombies. Everyone knows what the world has become, and they know very well how rare a survivor base like Anyang Mountain is. And incredible point, although there are still many people in Anyang Mountain who have other thoughts, it has to be said that the vast majority of survivors really hope that Anyang Mountain can be stabilized and exist for a long time. Point and Key is trying to bring down Anyang Mountain using the same method he used to deal with ordinary survivors, which is almost impossible. Point. Whether it was from Xia Bai's side or from the ordinary survivors in Anyang Mountain, it was far from easy. Point. Zhu Liangzheng looked at the thoughtful look on Xia Bai's face, and he obviously had some misunderstanding, thinking that Xia Bai was already excited about his invitation. Point. He struck while the iron was hot. Xia Bai, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We are accumulating strength. If you can settle in the Changbei Mountain survivor base, with your ability and means, plus our support, you will definitely be able to get the result in the shortest time. With the support of a large number of survivors, when the time comes, Xia Bai suddenly said, I won't go. His rejection could be described as categorical, with no hesitation at all. Zhu Liangzheng was slightly stunned, but he turned around very quickly and immediately frowned slightly, saying, why? Do you have any concerns? There's nothing to worry about. After all, Miss Zhu is in my Anyang Mountain. I see the sincerity of your Zhu group, but Xia Bai smiled. In several directions of Anyang Mountain, there is a large wave of corpses moving here. I went to Changbei Mountain to develop. What should I do in Anyang Mountain? Although he said that, what Xia Bai really wanted to say was, don't you want your daughter anymore? Moreover, in Xia Bai's view, Anki was trying to kill him and seize the battleship without considering the consequences for Anyang Mountain. Point. If Guachunming and Chenguangaiao succeed and Xia Bai dies, even if Chenguangaiao moves like thunder, it is impossible to kill everyone on Xia Bai's side in an instant. Chaos will definitely break out inside Anyang Mountain, and intelligent zombies outside Anyang Mountain are always there looking for opportunities. He may strike at any time. If the situation really develops like that, Anyang Mountain will definitely be in chaos, and even the entire survivor base will die. Point. And Nkisheng only cares about immediate interests and necessity. Point. He didn't care at all who died and who lived. Point. Xia Bai's words contained a slight displeasure. Point. Zhu Liangzheng noticed it immediately. He glanced at Xia Bai and said, this is indeed the truth, but there's nothing wrong with it. Xia Bai straightened his expression slightly and said, there's nothing wrong with me going to Changbei Mountain to support me. However, I already said it before, when I was in Liujia town. If I go to Changbei Mountain, then it's military support. It costs 100 missiles to start with. Moreover, the last time I helped go to Bincheng, I was almost crushed to death by zombies and almost shot down by our own missiles from the human side. Now I haven't gotten masterly the 100 missiles promised to me at that time. In My opinion, the credibility of the military is extremely bad. If you want my military assistance, you can get me 200 missiles first. As soon as I see the missiles, I will kill them in a warship in a minute. If there are no missiles, then I'm sorry, I was fooled again, because I made up the meeting. Zhu Liangzheng was shocked when he heard this guy, a survivor force and a guy who wants to eat airdropped supplies from the military, not only says that the military has a very bad reputation, but he also launches 200 missiles at the first word. Do you think that's 200 rounds of ammunition? Zhu Liangzheng wanted to curse. But Xia Bai did not give him this chance, but said directly, if the situation over there is really not as bad as you said, that would be great. These 200 pills missiles are a hard target. Without missiles, I won't set off. There's no need to talk about the rest. Chen Yingying, see you off. I noticed that some book friends said that the pace has slowed down, and that Battleships 2 rates have also dropped recently. It is true. This plot mainly explains the situation in Changbai Mountain and pave the way for the subsequent plot. I'm worried that everyone will not be able to understand some new characters and new plots. I understand, so the analysis is a bit too much, and the pace is a bit slow, but in fact this is difficult to write. Herbal tea has also reflected on it, and I would like to apologize to everyone in advance. This section will be laid out soon. The end brings us back to the right track. Please rest assured and continue to support this book and herbal tea. Thank you. Chapter 250 Action. Chapter 253 Action. Following Xia Bai's farewell, Chen Yingying immediately cut off the communication point. Zhu Liangzheng looked at the darkened screen in front of him, and his face also darkened. He sat back on the swivel chair at the back, was silent for a while, and then directly connected to Nkizheng through the existing communication equipment in the control room. Nkizheng's side was slightly chaotic and the sound seemed a bit noisy. What Zhu Liangzheng and Xia Bai said was true. Nkizheng had already set off in person, and the bombers had taken the lead to support the many divisions trapped in the Greater Khingan Mountains. The zombie tide that had shown astonishing combat capabilities from last night to early morning began to collapse at this time. Nkizheng's attack will surely bring him unimaginable huge fame. Zhu Liangzheng briefly reported Xia Bai's request for 200 missiles, and then said, the people I sent may have failed. Xia Bai may have noticed something. Nkizheng's response was very domineering and very confident. Don't worry about Anyang Mountain, it doesn't matter. When the situation on my side is resolved, throw a few missiles at Anyang Mountain to see if he still dares to fight with us. Want missiles? After saying these words, Nkizheng directly interrupted the communication point. Zhu Liangzheng pursed his lips slightly. Although Nkizheng didn't care whether he captured Anyang Mountain and Xia Bai, his failure to do so would definitely lower his status in Nkizheng's heart. Zhu Liangzheng was silent for a while before slowly standing up. Zhu Yiman is still in Anyang Mountain. At the same moment, in Anyang Mountain, the call ended, and Xia Bai exhaled slightly. He really wants 200 missiles, but he also knows that he may not have this opportunity now. Changbai Mountain is about to fall into a big turmoil, and Xia Bai certainly doesn't want Changbai Mountain to be like this. The Changbai Mountain survivor base is a barrier for the entire northeastern provinces. As long as it exists, zombies and intelligent zombies will not be able to completely wipe out the survivors in the northeastern provinces, let alone build a truly large-scale pig pen for survivors. From a small perspective, whether Changbai Mountain is dead or alive is of little significance to Xia Bai, but from an overall perspective, the existence of Changbai Mountain is very critical. Once the Changbai Mountain survivor base collapses, the situation in the three northeastern provinces will inevitably repeat the same mistakes and fall back into the same situation as in the previous life. If the situation really develops like that, what is the meaning of Xia Bai's rebirth in this life? But now is not the time to take action. Xia Bai's battleship has not reached level 5. It is not enough to see a battle between level 4 battleships and real military armed forces. Moreover, Changbai Mountain is still in the midst of internal fighting, and there is no real threat of zombies. Moreover, although Nkizheng's performance, he was interested in Anyang Mountain and Xia Bai's battleship, but his attention was obviously not on Anyang Mountain. It was impossible for Nkizheng to be idle enough to specially send a large army To deal with any young mountain point, Xia Bai still has time point. He must seize every moment to accumulate energy points and reach level 5 in the shortest possible time point. Military assistance. You must first act as a military force before you can provide military assistance. Xia Bai's battleships were already regarded as overlords to ordinary survivors and small scale military forces, but in the face of real military power, they were still just aircraft. Nkis Heng's attitude towards the battleships of any ancient and Xia Bai was not wrong, because the current battleships were indeed not good enough in the eyes of the military. Of course, what Nkis Heng didn't know was that Xia Bai's battleship could be upgraded. He now feels that any ancient and Xia Bai are just clowns, and the military assistance of 200 missiles is a complete dream. But Xia Bai knows that it will not be long before he will truly have the power to influence the entire military situation in the 3 eastern provinces. A 5th level battleship requires 100,000 energy points to upgrade. It only takes 10,000 energy points to upgrade a battleship from level 3 to level 4. 10 times the energy points means a tenfold improvement in the battleship. In the early stage of the battleship, the energy points required for each upgrade were scarce, and the space and level of improvement were also very limited. There was even no essential difference between levels 1, 2, and 3, but the higher the level of the battleship, every upgrade will be a leap forward. Xia Bai has also felt that the storm is coming, and he must upgrade as soon as possible. In addition, Xia Bai also felt that it was time to deploy his own power in Shangbei Mountain. Of course, for Xia Bai, this own power is actually a nine-liner. The current internal situation in Shangbei Mountain is chaotic and complicated. Li Jianbei's communication lines and information channels should also be interrupted as Nkis Engai's faction grows. If Xia Bai wants to obtain accurate information in Shangbei Mountain, he can only use his own. The channel is here. The situation in Anyang Mountain is stable, and few people are willing to go to Shangbei Mountain to be an informant. The melons that are forced are not sweet, especially in the end of the world. Junming is a typical case. This is also the reason why Xia Bai has not sent anyone to Shangbei Mountain location. But now, this is inevitable. Xia Bai planned to send 3 guys, Zi Yucheng, Hao Zuang, and Kyo Deming, to go to the Shangbei Mountain survivor base in shifts. However, Xia Bai didn't want to send too many people. His action this time was just if you want to obtain information from the survivors base in Shangbei Mountain, instead of fighting with them in the past. Fighting with so many people is not enough. He needs to speed up the time to reach level 5, and also needs to obtain accurate real-time information from the survivor base in Shangbei Mountain. Xia Bai couldn't help but take a deep breath. Shangbei Mountain is in turmoil, and Anyang Mountain, which has been growing, has come to take action. But as he and Zhu Liangzheng said before, if he really wants to move and go to Shangbei Mountain to do something, he must first solve the trouble around Anyang Mountain. Xia Bai left the control room and started to deal with the matter of sending people to Anyang Mountain. Hao Zuan was very supportive of Xia Bai's decision, and the first batch of people to be sent were selected from his side. Huang Qiulan was thinking about other things. According to her and her team's ideas, since they decided to send people to Shangbei Mountain, they should not just inquire for information. If they sent people like this, it would be difficult to get any useful information. It is better to take this opportunity to open up a situation in Shangbei Mountain. Although Xia Bai does not want to occupy Shangbei Mountain and become the king of the Northeast warlords, he can also establish a force belonging to Anyang Mountain in Shangbei Mountain. It does not need to be established with armed force. The businessman's waypoint anyway. The most indispensable thing on Anyang Mountain now is supplies. This will make it easier to open up the situation and gain a foothold. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.